the home of sim racing leagues. Our management tools allow you to recruit drivers and monitor their ratings and live splits. Find this and more at gridfinder.com. Sign up for free today. Is the home of sim racing leagues.
Good evening everyone and welcome back to the World Online Racing YouTube channel for another round of PC Tier 1 where the championship is getting hotter than ever. Heading into two of the three protagonists, home territory of Zandvoort. Should be having a fun one here this evening. My name is Dan Field and I believe for the first time, not just in WOR, but I believe ever, I'm being joined by Sappytron. Sappy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, mate. It's great to be alongside you here tonight, and it's great to have something like this. A great opportunity, so thanks to everyone at the WOR team. And yeah, we've got an amazing race tonight. We've got, as you said, our three main protagonists coming in. They're coming in hot. You've got some drivers who are coming in with a point to prove, some with a chip on the shoulder, as you like to say. And we've got a lot of competition that is about to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. Last time out in Austria, it was a stunning performance all around. Could be contender for race of the season. Let's have a look at the results from that race. Thomas Ronhor ended up taking the victory ahead of Barry Burman. Alvaro Caraton rounded off that podium, and then Jarno Otmir ended up finishing in fourth. How about that? The top four all separated by less than a second. Duncan Hoffland, after getting a 5-second time penalty removed, he jumps up into the top five. That's his first point in about 3 races, so really good result from him there. Tom Manley in 6th, 7th was Otis Lawrence, 8th Ishmael Fassi. A disappointing day for the former championship leader. Tommy Paragic 9th in his return to WOR. And then Shanika Clay rounding out that top 10. And we'll see how that affects the standings. It is Jan Ortman now ahead of Ishmael Fassi by a staggering 20 points. He's doing a great job at the minute. Actually, he might have been leading the championship coming into the last round, but I'm not too sure. Nevertheless, he has been able to extend that advantage to Ishmael Fassi. And then Thomas Ronhard now 50 points within Jarno Otmir. Of course, Jarno Thomas has 2 wins on the bounce. He gets himself ahead of Otis Lawrence in 4th position. Nicholas Longue really has ghosted throughout this season. I'm not actually too sure when the last time we had the Frenchman on the grid, but he sits 5th on 47, just 1 point ahead of Duncan Hoffland, who finally gets a decent haul of points. God, I can't get my words out today. Alvaro Caraton sits in 7th on 45, just 1 point back from Duncan. And then Dylan Warren still, I believe he is actually back here this evening, but he still sits on 42 points in 8th position. Joseph Loke not racing or not scoring points since the second round, sits 9th on 36, just 1 point ahead of Barry Burman, who breaks into that top 5 with his podium finish last time out. So, coming into this one today, Jan Watmir, 20 points clear of Ishmael Fassi. It's looking good for the Flying Dutchman.
It's looking very good indeed. I'm looking at some of the drivers at the top end of the standings, and one thing that stands out to me is you look at the top 5-6 drivers, it's the consistency. Particularly the likes of Jarno and Ishmael Fassi. They have, by and large, scored good points in nearly every single race. You have a couple of dips from all of them, but the points that they're able to haul in, round out, and some of them being able to keep high momentum, which I think is a big factor in these kind of leagues, the momentum that you can carry.
Absolutely.
It speaks a lot. It speaks a lot to them as a driver.
It really does, and I'm really happy to see that both Jan Watmir and Ishmael Fassi are having great seasons. Of course, the two of them, very different narratives. Jan Watmir, of course, defending his Season 15 title title and hunting that third WOR championship. He was the first driver to win 2. Don't see why he can be the he can't be the first to win 3. And then Ismail Fassi is a young, talented prospect in the F1 Sim Racing Series, and he's doing a fantastic job both in WOR and PSGL. So we'll have to wait and see how the pair of them cope on Jarno Opmeer's home soil. But before we get into qualifying, which has just got underway, we got some information for you all, and that is that sign-ups for WOR Season 17 are live, so make sure that you check that out. It is very exciting. Another season of WOR is on the horizon, one of the fastest growing leagues in the scene. And if you want to know how you can sign up, well, here you go. Step number 1, join our Discord server. You'll see all of the information on there. There should be a channel for signing up to Season 17 PC or console/Xbox, and then you have to complete 3 time trials of Belgium, Mexico, and Qatar. 3 fantastic circuits, and once you do that, you head on to the second part, which is it's actually new drivers completing 3 time trials, and then the returning drivers only need to complete 1 at Belgium. And then once you've done all that, make sure you submit your screenshots of your time trials by February 21st, and then you should hopefully, fingers crossed, be able to challenge the likes of Ismail Fassi and Alvaro Caraton that you are seeing on your screen. And if you're interested in the calendar for next season, it is the same for both PC and console. Bahrain round number 1, Saudi Arabia round 2, Imola round 3, Azerbaijan round 4, round 5 is Canada. Over the hump of that season, it is Italy at Monza, and then China, Austria, Miami, and Brazil to round off your season. Sappy, very excited for Season 17 of WOR, just on the horizon now.
It's looking like a great calendar coming up. And yeah, the returning drivers, I think that's a great idea because we've already seen them be proven talents. So having them complete 1 time trial instead of 3, I think a lot of the drivers on the field are going to be very happy with that one.
Yeah.
Especially if they're looking at promotion. It's like if you've got tier 3, tier 4, and you want to be pushing upwards, to have just 1 time trial, much happier with that. I know I'd be in that position.
Absolutely, myself the same. Maybe I'll sign up. We'll see what happens there. I doubt I'd be any good. I'd be in one of the lowest tiers possible, Sappy. I don't know how proficient you are on the F1 game, but me personally, absolutely dreadful. So maybe it's looking a bit unlikely. But I think everyone's going to be getting a little bit bored of seeing our faces on screen. Why not head to qualifying? We can see the first laps on the board already. Luke Smith is fastest as it stands, ahead of Dylan WOR. And of course, these are all intermediate laps around this Zandvoort circuit. But Sappy, what can we say about this track? Me personally, I absolutely love to drive it.
I absolutely love this track. It's such a unique challenge for the drivers. It's got its heritage, of course, that can't be denied, but the 13 corners, the way that it presents itself, particularly the banked corners, you'd look at a section of the track, and in the right light, you'd think that it was a speedway with how steep some of the banking is. It's like 20 degrees plus, I believe, on some of these corners, and that presents a unique challenge for these drivers. They're going to be used to grip levels at flat, but now, how are they going to contend with the camber? That's going to put additional pressure on the outside tyre. It will give them more lateral grip, but it's all too easy to take too much of that for granted. As I think we just saw Louis Welch take a little bit too much speed, cooked a bit too hard going into, I believe that was turn 7.
Yeah, turn number 7, 8, and 9. Those are some very tricky corners to get right because they're so high speed. But if you break along that curbing, you could be sealing yourself into the gravel. Great to see Louis Welch on the grid tonight. What a story this man has. I believe he's making his first start of this season, Sappy. But for as long as I have been a part of the league racing scene, Louis Welch has always been and still is the best pad driver ever. And it is so mind-blowing to me, still to this day, how he's able to compete with these guys on 1,000 plus euros, pounds, whatever currency you're using. These high-end, expensive rigs, he's doing it on a £50 DualShock 4 PlayStation 4 controller.
That is commitment if I've ever heard it. I know that the sort of equipment discussion comes up a lot in a lot of games, but the way that I like to look at it is it's difficult but not impossible. yes, wheel is obviously optimal, as we've seen from so much of the talent at the top end of the scene, but it is still possible to perform well on pad. Case in point, I'm a Rocket League keyboard player, and I'm about to get a lot of flack probably for that, but I stand by my decision. It's not optimal, you're absolutely right, but I have put toe-to-toe against controller players, and it's the same deal here. Louis Welch, on the controller, has proved that he has the finesse, he has the talent, he's mastered his control surface to where he's able to hang with everyone else on wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. And Louis Welch amongst, not really amongst anyone else. I think he's the only one at this level. And he's a great, I want to say, inspiration to all the pad players that, you said it really does go to show that you don't need these massive high-end direct drive Fanatec wheels, whatever they're using these nowadays. All you need is talent and a will to improve, and Louis Welch is the epitome of that, as it's very quiet out on circuit at the minute. It's a race clutch 1 and 2 for the time being. Luke Smith and Reese Linton occupying the fastest times. Granted, those are on intermediates. We're going to see much quicker times as this session goes on. How about this grid here this evening? Once again, we're being joined by the likes of Jan Ortmir, Thomas Ronhart and Ishmael Fassi Sappi. Those are the three that we need to focus on here this evening, but there's plenty of other names to look at. Who is catching your eye today?
Yeah, well, of course, you've got the quote-unquote big three that everyone's keeping an eye on as the main championship protagonists at this point in time. But I would keep my eye on Tamas Gal. He's really proven his pace in other tiers. He's proven himself as a formidable opponent throughout the scene. He's had almost a meteoric rise, and his pace cannot be trifled with. On his day, untouchable.
Absolutely, he's struggled here so far this season, but maybe today could be the turning point. We know how proficient he is in qualifying, so we need to look out for that Aston Martin driver. Me personally, I'm looking at Ruben Pedreño, season 13 title challenger, ended up third that season, making, I believe, his return here this evening. If anyone in the live chat knows that he's raced so far this season, do let me know and call me stupid, at your own discretion, of course. But Ruben Pedreño, very excited to see what he can do, of course, representing Red Bull here this evening. For whatever reason, I believe he's a part of the Alpine scheme, but nevertheless a very talented driver in his own right, and I'm very excited to see what he can do here today.
Yeah, a few different drivers that I think are going to potentially give us a little bit of an upset. I'm looking around the field, and I'm looking, like for instance in the Saubers, you've got Thomas Ronhart, but you've also got Ikebana. I hope I pronounced that right, forgive me if not. But it's looking around and seeing drivers who haven't always had the opportunity, who could really score here today. As we were saying about earlier, Zandvoort, unique track, unique challenges, and some drivers are going to adjust a lot better than others, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and this has been one of the most unpredictable circuits in WOR history. Of course, you think back to all the fantastic moments. One that springs to my mind personally is Lucas Blakely being wiped out on the straight. I believe it might have been, I think it was season 15, so last season. If not, it would have been season 14. Just got absolutely demolished down that main straight. It really can pull some wildies here along this track, and it's just so fun to really navigate it, especially in time trial. It is a little bit difficult to get some side-by-side action around through here, but all in all, a great circuit to drive, and it's one of the beautiful gems, I'd say, on the Formula One calendar. A lot of the tracks that we're getting now, Sappi, they're a bit lifeless. They're all flat. There's loads of runoff. This circuit, masses of undulation. You can see just how much the elevation changes. It flows with the land. It doesn't cut right through it. It's not on some man-made island. It's a beautiful circuit, which is very unforgiving. You can see the grass right next to the circuit where Ruben Pedreño is marking his first outlap of the session. It's going to be a fantastic qualifying here today. All 20 drivers out on circuit. First out, 9th place at the minute, Andrei Tarabukin.
It was first out earlier as well, and sort of initially got the benchmark out on the Inters before some of the other drivers decided to take a stab at it. And now it's actual serious time. So Tarabukin rounding corner 13. I think, Dan, I think we want to take it away. Give us the lap in motion.
Right, plenty of corners that I don't know how to pronounce, but turn number 1 is Tarzan Bok. This beautiful hairpin corner, heavy braking, where we're going to see plenty of lurching moves up the inside. Andrei Tarabukin on the curb, ever so slightly off the exit of that corner, then in towards this downhill left-hander. Very easy to lock up through there, but you could see some beautiful side-by-side action as you approach the ever-changing S's section of Sector 1, coming towards the end of this now and towards turn number 7, almost completely flat in these modern day Formula 1 cars, where you're getting towards the very technical second sector. Be careful on those curves along the outside. You could see yourself into the tulips very easily through there as you weave your way in towards turn number 10 and off the exit to one of 2 DRS zones along this track in towards now the end of this sector. It's going to be a 47.540 for Andrei Tarabukin, finding a decent improvement on his initial intermediate lap time as he once again slides his way off the exit of turn number 12 in through now the final few corners at turn number 13 and 14. This beautiful bank turn, speedway-esque for Andrei Tarabukin, keeping it pinned to the right hand side and get the shortest run to the line, and the laying down of the gauntlet goes the way of Andrei with a 108.263, 2/10 quicker than Joni Tormala.
Yep, and then you got Tom Manley coming down the straight, and it's going to be a 107.9, immediately setting the new benchmark. That's going to be fastest. Tamas Gal, 108.0, goes second. I believe that was just Kai Pearson coming through there, followed by Ben Sabakonye, 108.2. We're seeing tenths, hundredths, single milliseconds splitting some of these drivers. Shanada Kay in third, Philip Presnader in fourth position. Next up, you've got, I believe that was Pedreno in P7, followed by Jake Benham, 107.957, just 3 milliseconds behind the lead in Tom Manley.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff. Incredibly fine margins along this very short lap. Istvan Pukki to the line, a 108.160 from him. How about Jarno Otmir, the championship leader? His rival Thomas Ronhaar comes to the line with a 107.835, blowing both Tom Manley and Jake Benham's time out of the water. What about Jarno Otmir up to the line now? And it's P5 for the time being for him. One of the Haas cars of Reese Linton to the line, and it's a 108.163. Incredibly close to both Istvan Pukki and Louis Welch, who have done the exact same lap time. Very fine margins along this fantastic lap. But how about that as Luke Smith, I didn't even see, Luke Smith has done the exact same lap as Tom Manley. So that is 2 instances, Sappy, of drivers doing the exact same lap time. Tom Manley and Luke Smith on a 107.954, and then Istvan Pukki and Louis Welch on a 108.160.
The margins are so tight with this roster of drivers on this track. It is insane how tight the margins are. Just a single slip out of a corner and a little bit less acceleration, that could net you about half a tenth to a tenth of a second. And in this roster, that could be the difference between P10 and P15. That just gives you an idea of the kind of spread, the field spread. It's next to nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly close. This basically F1 sim racing caliber grid. If they're not in the F1 sim racing series, then they are more than likely to be a part of it in the future, or have already been at that level. Tom Manley into the pit lane. He decides to retire. Most other drivers are coming back into the pits. Now it's just Jarno Otmir, the last man out on circuit. Very close times at the minute throughout the grid, but Thomas Ronhaar, gotta say, as I previously mentioned, blowing everyone's lap time out of the water, over a tenth clear of Tom Manley and Luke Smith in second. Should firmly be safe into the next session. Let's have a look though then at the other end. In the drop zone at the moment, it is Ruben Pedreño, Andrei Tarabukin, Kai Pearson, Joni Tormala, and Ika Boehner. There's one name that sticks out to me there, Sappy, and it is of course Kai Pearson, losing the console tier 1 title earlier on this week by just 4 points. He's coming into this one with a chip on his shoulder, and I really do hope that that loss hasn't affected his confidence.
Well, he's still got plenty of time. Remember, only Q1. That means he at least needs to get onto a 108.0. That's my prediction for the, quote, safe zone time, because I think we will still see a few drivers improve around this circuit. And in fact, we can see that is going to be Shanaka Clay along with Louis Welch just coming out of the pit lane there. But yeah, Kai Pearson, he's got a point to prove. He knows that he's capable of it, and I know that he's come into this race definitely with fire in his eyes, with a renewed competitive spirit. And I would say, as hard as it is to stomach a loss like that, especially one so close, it only further fuels the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to come into this one feeling a lot of different things at the minute. It's going to be very difficult for him to be, try and take to this grid, which is considerably quicker than the console tier, where he's unfortunately just lost the title, and then to take it to these F1 sim racing legends like Jarno Opmeer. It's going to be very difficult for him this evening, but he has got another shot. The top 6 all retiring on their laps. How about that from Xander van Dijken in P6? I believe the first ever PlayStation champion, if I'm not mistaken. I think in like season 10, he won that title under the name VRT Balliner a long time ago at this point. I think maybe at the beginning of F1 2021. Do correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, all those stats relatively out of my mind, but shout out to Xander van Dijken, a name that I very much enjoy seeing on this PC tier 1 grid. But the top 6 all retiring, and then it is 7 downwards all the way to Ikabena from Tamas Gao. An incredibly close field in places. Should see a very interesting end to qualifying here.
Yeah, well, they've got only one more shot at this, so drivers are trying to pace themselves to get out just ahead of the flag, or at least enough to where they can complete their run. They don't want to be caught out, and they don't want to be in a position where they're left with no recourse should they be put in the drop zone. Shanaka Clay and Louis Welch are going to be the first ones out to go on full fat hot laps, and we're going to see how they do here. They are safe for now, but again, like I was saying, that 108.0 is going to be your guaranteed safe zone. And 108.160 still has the chance for improvement for a lot of drivers. Louis Welch abandons, but Shanaka Clay continues.
Yeah, Shanaka up by about 600ths of a second in that first sector, but I think as well he has decided to back off on that run. Save the batteries, definitely got enough fuel to go once again. I think that's the mindset Louis Welch is taking into that lap. So the pair of them safe for the time being, but plenty of drivers on runs. However, Ruben Pedreño, he cannot put a foot wrong on this lap. In that drop zone on a 108.241, just 200ths off the back of bench Jabo Konyi. He needs this lap to go absolutely perfect to get himself into the next session. We'll see what he can do as he approaches the second sector split. His teammate Shanaka Clay is off to the right hand side, and Ruben is up by 800ths of a second. It is an improvement, but it is marginal. It might not be enough. Joni Tormala has crashed along his lap and will be confirmed to be out of this qualifying session. Ruben Pedreño sliding his way off the exit of turn number 13, trying to keep it to the right hand side, through now towards the start finish line. He is also out of qualifying here this evening. What about Andre Tarabukin then? Up towards the line with just 3 seconds to go. Someone's come across, I believe, that was the Haas of Ben Chabrakonyi securing himself into P9. Andre to the line now, gets himself safe for now. Dylan Warren has abandoned this lap. He is out of qualifying. Kai Pearson looking to save his qualifying with this run. Currently improving, but is it enough to get himself into the next session? It's a disappointing exit for Kai Pearson. The only man that really does need to worry about being eliminated now is Ika Boehner. Can he eliminate Andre Tarabukin? These two very experienced on the PC platform, being here relatively since the beginning of things. Here comes Ika Boehner then up towards the line. Is it enough to get himself into the next session? How about that? A 108.213 for the pair of them. Ika Boehner eliminated from qualifying despite doing the exact same lap time that Andre Tarabukin has done there. I gotta say, Sappy, that's a kick in the teeth.
That is a kick in the teeth indeed, to be so close but yet so far. As Louis Welch comes across the line in the P11 performance. A few more drivers out on the field and still have a point to prove, but I think that is curtains. So if I was the likes of Ika Boehner, I would be fuming. I would be fuming. Interestingly, though, I saw in the camera for Dylan Warren, he actually went off at the exact same place that Joni Tormala went off, but managed to save the car.
Wow. So Dylan Warren making a critical error on that lap, and it's one thing to mention that he was also just within 1,000th of both Andre Tarabukin and Ika Boehner. Thomas Ronhard tops that session then with a 107.835. So that lap at the beginning for him was good enough to secure himself not only into the next session, but into P1. A fantastic time from him there. Untouchable by anyone. Reece Linton was the only man to get within 1/10 of Thomas then, as Tom Manley and Luke Smith, they sit 3rd and 4th, with Jake Benham just in behind, 3,000 separating those three drivers. Tamas Gal in 6th, then Philip Presnader in 7th, 8th is Farsi, 9th Jarno Otmir, and then 10th Xander Van Dyken. Let's have a look at the drop zone. It is Ikabena, Dylan Warren, Kai Pearson, Rune Pedronio, and Yoni Tormala all out of this qualifying session. But Sappy, how about that? Andrei Tarabukin, Ikabena doing the exact same lap time. Dylan Warren missing out by 1,000th of a second. We could have had, if Dylan was 1,000th quicker, we could have had 3 drivers on the exact same lap time. That was the difference maker between getting into the next session and being eliminated.
A hair's breadth margin. That's what we're talking about here. At this level, the slightest of mistakes is all it takes, and we saw that out there just now. I'm very interested on the fact that Thomas Ronhaar, he not only got the fastest lap in Q1, but he got it by almost an entire 10th. So while he doesn't necessarily need to in Q1, are we seeing a little bit of mind games?
Yeah, I mean, that was I'm not too sure really from Thomas Ronhaar. He's showing his hand very early that he knows how to be quick around this circuit. Let's actually head back over to the game scene to have a look at Thomas Ronhaar out on circuit. He is the first man, the leading car in this whole gaggle of drivers. I'd imagine we're going to see plenty of grid penalties for illegal blocking as one of the Aston Martins goes through. I believe that is Xander Van Dyken, also racing on home soil. Sappy, got plenty of drivers hailing from the Netherlands racing along this circuit. You got to think the likes of Xander, Thomas, Jarno, all of them who are racing on their home circuit, they're going to want to win this one just that little bit more than any other race.
There's something in the local diet. There has to be something, because I don't know how the Netherlands produces consistently such high-class drivers, be they IRL or in the sim racing world. That is, I don't know, but one thing's for sure, whatever they're doing something right.
It's working, isn't it? I mean, you got Max Verstappen in Formula 1. You got Jarno Otmir. You could 100% argue, and I think there's really no argument against him being the best F1 esports driver of all time. You've got Thomas Ronhaar winning round number 1 of F1 sim racing. Whenever that's coming back, he could be a title protagonist heading into that season. And we got Xander Van Dyken, a former champion here in WOR and a very proficient driver along the sim rig. The Dutch just seem to be good. Fair play to them. It doesn't mean you are good if you are Dutch, but there's just a little bit of a correlation there as Xander Van Dyken gets his lap underway. Very excited to see what he can do along this run into this first sector. It is so fun to watch these drivers, especially when you ride on board with them. It's so fun to watch them navigate that twisty first section of that circuit.
I liken Zandvoort not so much to a track, but more to a roller coaster. I feel like if you swapped out the cars for a rail track, this would be right at home on a theme park.
Absolutely. I mean, you can only describe a few modern Formula 1 circuits that are really like that, and they are relatively new additions to the F1 games. Zandvoort is one that comes to mind, and Imola is very much a roller coaster to drive. These are, you're sensing a theme, these are sort of the older circuits which are built around the land, and Portimao as well is up and down throughout. But you're absolutely right, as Xander comes to the end of this lap, a 283 for 289 from him. Oh my god, the times are tumbling down. Jarno Otmir quickest at the minute. I need to stop waffling as the session continues to get underway, as Tamas Gal goes just 400ths quicker than Jarno Otmir. Jake Benham to the line, 108.166. They're all coming in thick and fast. Seems like one of the McLarens has backed off on a run. That is Louis Welch, unfortunately. Shaniko Clay to the line, puts himself into P2. A very nice time there as Tom Manley's in the pit lane. Louis Welch has backed off on that lap. And as quick as they started, Sappy, the laps are over.
Yep, and the immediate thing that's apparent is, once again, just like we saw in Q1, you look at the time spreads in Q2. Thomas Ronhaar and Ismail Farsi, 6 milliseconds. You've got the likes of Andrei Tarabukin and Philip Presnader, 4 milliseconds. You've got 4 milliseconds again from Benze Shabakonyi and Reese Linton. 15 between Xander Van Dyken and Reese Linton. Like, the spread, again, is so tight. And even in Q2, where you don't even need to give it 110%, drivers are out in full force and they're showing their hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tamas Gal, quickest. We alluded to earlier on that he is a very good driver along qualifying. He's also been very strong in various tiers of various different leagues, and it's great to see him kicking it with the big boys here in PC Tier 1 of WOR, and really excelling. He's done a fantastic job at the beginning of Q1, getting himself into the next session with just one set of compound used, and then now he's topped Q2 with 10 minutes left to go. It's going to put him into very strong stead into hopefully fighting for pole position coming into Q3. We look at Louis Welch then off the exit of the final corner, I believe has actually gone for a second push lap despite backing off on that first run. He's completely flat on the battery. Louis will decide to pull it back into the pit lane. No use really setting a time that wasn't going to be competitive, and just come back into the pit lane, save yourself the extra minute or two of going along trundling on your in lap. But now, as just a minute ago, Sappy, we saw all 15 drivers out on circuit. It's an absolute ghost town now.
Yep, everyone follows the same rhythm, and like it or not, it's optimal. It's optimal to get these sort of early runs, and then everyone goes back in at the same time. And some would think that it's more ideal to get yourself out while there's nobody out, get yourself in the zone of no traffic, and we see some drivers who roughly follow that ideal, but simultaneously you do cap yourself out of one extra run when you try to go against the usual cadence of cars, which can be a deal breaker.
Absolutely, as now already we're getting drivers back out onto the circuit. It's a quick stop and go in the garage for them there. Tamas Gal is the first one out on track, as is Shanika Clay and Andre Tarabuke, and I'm sensing a bit of a theme here that these three like to come out very early for their qualifying runs, then wasting no time whatsoever, and I think that's got its advantages and it's got its disadvantages. Of course, you're going to have a lot more clear air, you're not going to be fighting through traffic, and if you're at a time crunch, it's better to be further up just so you really do secure yourself to actually get a lap on the board. Really, there's no point setting a lap if you've missed the actual window to get that lap in and registered. But of course, it's got its drawbacks. You think to my mind's blanking. What are the drawbacks? The track evolution, of course. The more that these drivers lay down rubber along the circuit, the more grip that it's going to have, and so in theory, being out later means you're going to have the most optimal track conditions, and that could mean just a couple thousandths up on your rivals. But Sappy, as we saw in the last session, that was the difference between making it into Q2 and getting eliminated.
Yep, and that's why you see everyone try and stretch it right out to the very end, try and cross the line with 3 seconds to go, because they can still get themselves an extra lap if they just time things perfectly. And that track evolution is not to be trifled with. In conditions like these, fairly hot, 27 degrees local track temp we're seeing here. In conditions like these, having a rubbered up track can be the difference between a 108 and a 107. And in this company, game changer.
Absolutely. You need every bit of time that you need there, as Ismail Fassi gets himself a 5-place grid penalty for some illegal blocking. That's going to confirm that we're going to have a lobby restart heading into the race. It's going to allow for us to digest what happens in this qualifying session. Of course, we're just about halfway through, actually, both Q1 and Q2. Now, heading in towards the twilight stage of qualifying, just 7 minutes left to go in this Q2 session. We should see ourselves a nice clear picture as to who is making their way into the final parts of qualifying, as Tamas Gal continues to improve on his run, up by almost a tenth and a half at the minute. He's looking like a very strong contender for a potential pole position, donning the number 95. I know he's got that Cars profile picture on his Steam and indeed Twitter profile, so he seems to be a big fan of Mr. Lightning McQueen. Is he as fast as Lightning as he comes across the line? Indeed he is, up by over 0.2 of a second. That's not going to stop Shanika Clay, though, getting himself ahead of his rival. A fantastic lap time coming out from Shanika.
Yeah, brilliant times there coming out from a lot of the field. We just saw Andrew Tarabukin. Next one to cross to the 107s, a 0.953. Next down on the field, I believe that's Tom Manley, yet to set a time. What's his benchmark going to be? He's going to smash it. He's going to go straight to the top with a 0.796. Excellent stuff. Louis Welch, 0.905. Next is going to be, I believe that was Prejnader with a 0.826, joined immediately by his teammate, 25 milliseconds behind, and Xander Van Dyken split in the two.
Absolutely, Jake Benham to the line at 107.805. So good enough for P2 at the minute. We're looking at Thomas Ronhaar, quickest in Q1, quickest in Q2 for now, but a great lap time from Thomas Ronhaar there. Not quite the gap that he would have had before in Q1 in comparison to Tom Manley there, but still a mighty 700s quicker than his not fellow countryman, but his fellow Tom, whatever you want to call it, compatriot there. Very close between the pair of them. Reese Linton has also come across the line, unfortunately slowest of the bunch, and everyone's going to come once again back into the pit lane in the drop zone at the minute. It's both McLarens of Louis Welch, Andre Tarabukin, Isfan Pookie and Reese Linton, but the big name that sticks out to me is Ishmael Fassi, a championship protagonist, losing his footing with Jarno Otmir in recent weeks, and in fact he's not actually outscored the Dutchman since round number 3 of this season. It's been an uphill battle for Ishmael in recent weeks, but he's looking to strike back strong here today in Zandvoort on Jarno's home territory. As I believe that was Jarno's teammate actually, of Jake Benham, just cruising on by him, checking him out and letting him know, hey mate, you're in the drop zone there. So Ishmael needs to be a lot better in the final part of this Q2 session.
Yeah, he's got to pick up the pace. I'm a strong believer in momentum, and that is something that Fassi has lost. The last 2 results were a DNF and just 4 points. So compared to the likes of Opmir, who got a P2 and then a P4, and Ronhaar with a double win, he's got to find that momentum again. He's got to find that pace, whether that's a confidence thing or whether that is simply just not having it on lock week to week. It's crunch time. It really is crunch time for him. He's got to prove that he can put it all down on the track and keep that proximity to the champ lead.
Luck does play a factor though. If you cast your minds back to Belgium, where he did indeed DNF, that was a hectic battle in the second sector, and unfortunately they all just concertinaed up, and Ishmael Fassi was at the back of the train, nowhere to go. Really unfortunate scenes for him. There was right in the thick of things as well last time out in Austria, so I believe he was able to score some points in the end, but it's been a tough recent weeks for Ishmael Fassi, and you're absolutely right in saying that he's lost his momentum, but he has every chance to regain it here this evening around a circuit like Zandvoort, where really anything can happen. A good result for him today could maybe see a resurgence in his championship hopes. I think what he wants to do in the last 4 rounds of this season is just close the gap to Jarno Otmir ever so slightly. At the moment, it's 20 points between him and the Flying Dutchman, and that is not good enough, unfortunately, for Ishmael Fassi to be comfortably and confidently take the fight to Jarno Otmir, because he's always going to have that in the back of his mind. And if Jarno outscores him by 5 points, Ishmael Fassi can drop a win, and if Jarno scores a top 10, or maybe even not a point, actually, if countback rules apply, then Jarno could still be leading the championship heading into the last 2 races of the season. So Jarno Otmir at the minute in a great position in the championship, Sappi. Ishmael Fassi's got it all to do today.
Yeah, and he very much has the opportunity to get that momentum back and start swinging up once again, because he's shown he can do it. He has the pace, otherwise he would not be sitting P2 in the championship currently. You've got Louis Welch and Xander van Dijken being the first 2 out, early out on the train, as we see, I think, yet another reason that we're going to get a lobby restart come end of the quali. But we're going to see a few of these drivers go for runs to burn some fuel before the final full send lap later on.
We got Louis Welch first out on circuit by a decent margin along everyone else. He is currently in the drop zone at the minute, but he's just missing out by, what's that, 600ths of a second to Jarno Otmir, so it's looking very fine at the minute. I believe it's actually 800ths of a second separating himself and 10th position. Jarno being in 10th position actually is very interesting, because in recent weeks I think he's actually picked it up in qualifying. Normally we don't hail Jarno Otmir for being the best qualifier, but he's been really strong and getting himself into Q3 multiple times and fighting for pole position. So to see him this low down in Q2 sparks a little bit of worry in the Flying Dutchman, but really it doesn't actually matter where he qualifies, because he's just that damn good in the race. You'd expect him to be fighting for the win later in the race, but nevertheless, Louis Welch up by just about 200ths of a second. This is good enough to get himself for the time being into the next session, but he's reaching a whole gaggle of cars in that final sector, especially in towards turn number 11 and 12. It's going to be very difficult for Louis Welch to navigate through that traffic here.
He's going to be in a little bit of trouble. Now, luckily, he has got a few windows where he can get himself out of the way, or the other cars can get out of his way, I should say, more accurately. But, yeah, it could come into a little bit of difficulty depending on the timing. Luckily, he's just managed to dodge those bullets. He's coming around the final corner now. He's looking very good on pace as he hangs it as close to the inside as he can. Lean into the banking. What's it going to be for Louis Welch? It's P5.
Nice stuff from Louis Welch there. Good for now. However, there's plenty of drivers in behind him within 100th, 200ths of a second. Jarno Opmeer isn't too far back, and he is in the drop zone at the minute, looking to set his final lap in Q2 to come to the line of 107.762. Should hopefully see him into the final parts of qualifying. A brilliant lap coming out from him there. Xander Van Dijken, he's unfortunately backed off on his lap, and he'll return to the pit lane only in P8 and retires from this session. That could see him out of qualifying. Tom Manley at the minute is down on his previous best time, but he's already in P3, so I wouldn't be too worried if I was the AlphaTauri driver. He's going to take to the flag anyways, and he does not improve on that lap. What about one of the Williams cars of Ismail Fassi? Purple in Sector 2. His teammate, I believe, no, he hasn't got a teammate in this session. Of course, Kai Pearson was eliminated. Ismail Fassi, though, up on his previous best and looking to get himself out of the drop zone, could eliminate one of the best qualifiers on the grid in Luke Smith. Luke Smith already out of this session as Reese Linton gets himself into the top 5. Here comes Ismail Fassi, and it's not good enough. He misses out on Q3 by just 0.04 of a second there. Ben Shabakoni has backed off on this run. He will not be improving on this lap time. Ismail Fassi out in Q2. That is a big blow to his championship hopes, as he's way off of what Jarno Opmeer is at the minute, who has set the exact same lap time as Tamas Gao. Jarno Opmeer versus Thomas Ronhaar into the final session. Ismail Fassi out of qualifying.
I bet Xander Van Dijken was just quaking in his boots when he backed off and went into to retire, because he was very close to the drop zone, and he was 4 seconds shy of being in it. And that's going to be, as much of a positive as it is for Xander Van Dijken, it's going to be a brutal hit for Ismail Fassi. 4 milliseconds is all that separated him in Q3, and in his position, that is a very big hurdle to climb.
You've got to consider how valuable qualifying is around this circuit. There's only 2 DRS zones along here in Zandvoort, and not really that many opportunities to actually find and overtake. Ismail Fassi starting from 11th outside the point. It's going to be very difficult for him to actually make it up into those point-paying positions and really challenge the likes of Thomas Ronhaar and Jarno Opmeer, who on this trajectory should be starting P1 and P2. I have no doubt in my mind that Thomas Ronhaar is going to be on pole position. I think he's just been untouchable so far in qualifying. But Jarno Opmeer certainly could be up there. And given the gaps that are going to be between them in terms of the track position, it's going to be very difficult for Ismail Fassi to really hold a candle to Jarno Opmeer in the standings after this one. But how about that for a qualifying session? 8 drivers are within a tenth of Thomas Ronhaar, so a lot finer margins than last time. Jarno Opmeer is in P2 on the same lap time as Tamas Gao. Tom Manley 4th, just 4 thousandths quicker than Reese Linton. Then Jake Benham a further 5 thousandths slower than the Haas in 6th. 7th for Shanaka Clay, 8th is Louis Welch, and surviving in the session is Philip Presnader and Xander Van Dijken. Missing out Ismail Fassi by just 4 thousandths of a second. Eliminator alongside Luke Smith, Jabba Connie, Andrei Tarabukin, and Pookie was the last one out of that session there. So once again, some big names being eliminated. We talked a lot about Ismail Fassi, but I gotta say, I'm very surprised to see Luke Smith out of qualifying here.
Yeah, that is a little bit of an upset that I wasn't really expecting. I definitely was expecting a faster performance from some of them, but then you kind of have to take into account that the difference between P1 and 10 was basically a tenth.
Yeah.
Like, there's next to no time between the top and the bottom. Millimeters can separate you from a position, and we saw that on full display.
Absolutely. It was incredibly close throughout the entirety of Q1. It was a lot closer in Q2. With the projections at the minute, we're going to see a stunning Q3 session. We're about to head onto the grid now. I think it is a good time to ask the question who we're all going for pole position. Let us know in the live chat. Sappy, who are you going for pole?
Of pole in Q1, he's pole in Q2, and I'd be very surprised if he doesn't keep that up in Q3. I'm going with Ronha.
You really can't put it past him. However, a lot of people really do love Jarno Opmeer in the live chat, and there's some other good qualifiers on this grid. Shanika Clay has stepped up recently. Tamas Gal could come up with the upset, so please do, everyone in the live chat at the minute, let us know who you think is taking pole position. We'll read out some of your answers. Bly's Disaster Class says easy Ron Ha pole. Andrew Hornigold is pulling for Jarno Opmeer in Q3. Bertie Ryland is saying easy Ron Ha pole. Jason is going let's go Goat Ha. No surprises there. Will Martin throwing out a very interesting name in Jake Benham. F1 Biarbs is also giving us an interesting prediction in Reese Linton for the upset. Akash, hopefully I said that name right, is saying Jarno for pole. Drisco's Otmir Reguy. I see Florian saying pre-Shanika, which means just look at Shanika. Urzel says Tamas Gal. Lots of different names being thrown out there. Tropic going with Thomas will take it. Cambo says Tom Manley. That's a name that I love to see in the conversation for pole position. Sappy, lots of names being thrown out there, but gotta say the general consensus is Otmir versus Ronha.
Yep, those are the two main protagonists. Everyone's sort of keeping an eye on right at this moment in time. It is good to see, though, so many names being thrown into the boiling pot, and it is a testament to how high of a level everyone is operating. Obviously, we do look at the front of the drivers' standings and look to some of our top contenders, but that does not mean to say that the rest of these drivers are not absolutely cooking in their cockpits right now.
Absolutely, as we've only got two drivers out on circuit at the minute. Thomas Ronhart and Louis Welch are taking to the track. Thomas is a very interesting one. I think he's got that extra set of the soft tyres that really to burn, because he's the only man who's actually been able to get into both Q2 and Q3 on one set of tyres. So Thomas Ronhart is in a very advantageous position in his Sauber at the minute. He's got that green and black helmet, sort of resembling that Stake F1 team in real life look that they've got going there. But this is still the Sauber that we are looking at now as Thomas Ronhart comes across the line, laying down the gauntlet of a 107.606. I've no doubt in my mind that there's going to be plenty of guys contending for a quicker lap later on in this session, as Louis Welch unfortunately invalidated on that lap time there. He'll return into the pit lane as now multiple other drivers, Shanika Clay, Xander Van Dyken, Philip Prejnader, Tamas Gal are making their way out onto the circuit. I see a Mercedes of Jarno Opmeer donning the number 5 Sebastian Vettel-esque, looking for his third title here in WOR this season. Sappy, he's got to take the fight to Thomas Ronhart this evening, because Thomas has been lightning fast in recent weeks, and there's 50 points between them. But in the next 4 races, who knows what can happen? Jarno Opmeer cannot afford to be comfortable at this point.
Yeah, there's no such thing as comfortable at this stage in the game. Even if it's fairly late into the championship, everything is still on the table. It's just about making sure you can fully maximize your opportunities that you have. So it very much could see Ron Ha continue that momentum from the past 2 races, get really high results, and then by the last round, we'll see him neck and neck for the title. But in the same light, we could see some upsets from Farsi, making good on a rough start, being eliminated down in P11. We could see him take the fight. We could see Otis Lawrence come in here. We could see all sorts of manner of things, and it's a really, really difficult thing to call. But one thing's for sure, as we see a few more drivers going out, we are seeing everyone trying to extract 110% of the car.
Yeah, they're all looking for that fraction of a second that's going to be the difference between starting on the front row and starting on the 3rd row or whatever, on the 4th row. But Jarno Opmeer out on circuit at the minute. We'll have a look back at the Flying Dutchman later on in this session. We'll have a look at Shanika Clay now, the one Red Bull left in this session. He's making his way in towards the 2nd sector now, and towards this little back straight towards turn number 11. We could see some potential moves up the inside, but it's a very tight corner. We're right on board with him through this section. Very devilish curves as well along this circuit. It can really dissettle the car if you run over them, especially on the inside of turn number 11, in through now 13, and then flat out through turn number 14. There's a name for this corner that I do not remember. I think it might be about Ari Lundijk, the former 2-time IndyCar Indy 500 winner. As Shanika Clay comes to line, it's good enough for P2. at the minute. Let's check back in on Jarno Otmir. 23.679 in Sector 1. See if that time is going to be... Oh, Jarno Otmir spun! Oh, dear. Jarno Otmir with the spin through turn number 7. Heading into the final parts of this session. 6 minutes left to go. No lap on the board. That's a set of the tyres gone, Sappy.
I think he just dipped his back left into the grass a little bit, and that's all it takes. A bit of the stab of the throttle, and you are round. Luckily, no damage to the car. He saved it, but yeah, with all the gravel he's picked up and the pace that he's lost from the slide, that is going to be that set of softs basically off the table at this level.
It's a disappointing way for this session to start for Jarno Otmir, but he should have another set of tyres in that Mercedes garage. See what Jarno Otmir can do as he'll make his way back into the pit lane. His teammate Jake Benham is taken to the start-finish line. He'll nestle himself into a very nice P3 on the second row of the grid alongside Philip Presnader. Name we've not actually really talked about here this evening. Philip Presnader, shout out to him. Doing a very good job in P4 at the minute. He silently made his way into the final parts of qualifying. I think just about making it into the session. It was around about that 11th to 15th mark in Q1, and then was in that 6 to 10 in Q2. So he's just about found his way into the final parts of qualifying as Lou Welch comes to the line with a 108.538, a disappointing time to say the very least for the pad goat. But yeah, shout out to Philip Presnader as all times are on the board now, Sappy. Thomas Ronnar currently quickest by just about 600ths of a second. Anna Van Dyken gets himself into P3. Tom Manley is joining Thomas Ronnar on the front row. This would be a very interesting duo, starting P1 and P2, of course. Both of them former Xbox champions, and I saw a little comment from World Online Racing, the official YouTube channel. There's 5 console champions in the top 10 at the minute. I believe I know them, but Sappy, I want to see your WOR knowledge. Who are those 5 drivers?
Oh no, you're gonna have to quit. You're quizzing me on this now. No, I will be fully blunt with you. I say as much research that I've managed to do before jumping in here. I came into the scene relatively late in the game. I only joined late in the lifespan of 22, so I'd rather not embarrass myself. I let the drivers speak on the track as they are now. I'm not gonna let the history. I'm not gonna let the history define them, because we've seen some new drivers coming in and hanging with the best of them.
Tell you what, I'm not even sure if I know them fully, but please, Luke, I see Luke in the live chat at the minute. Let me know if I'm wrong. I believe that those 5 champions are Thomas Ronnar, Tom Manley, Xander Van Dyke, and Jake Benham, all of them in the top 4 at the minute, and then Reese Linton is the last one and the most recent console champion. But I believe that those are the drivers, the 5 console champions on PC. I think one thing to take from that, Sappy, is that it really shows you can start from anywhere and compete at the very top level. All of these guys, pretty much everyone on this grid, started on a PlayStation or an Xbox, and now look at them fighting at the very top of WOR PC Tier 1.
Yep, anywhere, anything, any control scheme, you have a chance to play with the best. It's that simple. You've got to put in the work, you've got to build the consistency, the pace, the skill, the training. But beyond that, there is no secret sauce. There is no hidden win button. There is simply training and skill and dedication and willing to put in the work to be one of the best, as we've seen by the diversity of origins from the grid and around WR as a whole.
Absolutely. There is no cheat code. There's no quick, easy way to make it. It's just got to be through sheer hard work. And I actually look on Steam quite often and compare my hours to a lot of these guys. And they are looking at 10 times the amount of what I play here. And that is I very rarely play the F1 game. I've got about 150 hours, I think, on F1 23, and I gotta say probably 80-90% is commentating. These guys are spending hours a day in their rigs fighting to be the very best. Shanika Clay, as we approach the end of qualifying, is the first one out on circuit, but it's very interesting to see Jarno Otmir in 10th position at the minute. He is in that final sector beginning his final run. You gotta think the pressure is piling up for Jarno Otmir here.
The pressure is certainly on, and yeah, after he burnt that initial lap, he burnt that first set of softs, all eyes are riding on him now, and all eyes are on this run, because if he can't get this run locked in together, he could be seeing himself at the bottom of the grid for Q3. He could see himself starting from P10.
Absolutely, we have a minute left to go in this session. Jake Benham is the last man to get a lap underway, and he is way down on the circuit. He should be able to get that lap started, as Shanika Clay has backed off on that run. Maybe was put off ever so slightly by that Mercedes on the inside of turn at number 8. It's a relatively blind corner as you approach, and it can be very difficult to navigate, as Jan Watmir now off the exit of turn at number 10, taking to this little back straight. Both Jake Benham, his teammate, and Shanika Clay getting out of the way of the Flying Dutchman. As expected, he is improving by a huge amount at the end of this run. He's actually purple in Sector 2. Will this lap hold a candle to Thomas Ronhaar? You've got to think this is the last chance for Jan Ortmir to mount a challenge on Thomas Ronhaar, who's looked so dominant in this qualifying session. Here comes Jan Ortmir then up towards the line. It's good enough for P2, but he's not going to be able to take pole position from Thomas Ronhaar, getting his lap underway now.
Yep, and so with that, he is going to be in the front row, but can he necessarily keep it? You've got a lot of other drivers who are making their way around the course now. You've got both the Aston Martins still on the field, as well as both Mercedes. I think only 2 teams who have got both cars still on track. But here we go.
Wow.
Tamas Gal, 107.561 out of nowhere. While we look at the Mercedes and the Sauber, that Aston has come in like an absolute rocket. Philip Presneder come in P3 with a .632. Next we've got the, I believe, AlphaTauri Tom Manley, and he's going to be coming across the line. .551, a hundredth of a second even faster. So this is do or die time for these drivers. Reese Linton, .633, single millisecond behind Presneder. Xander Van Dyken, .514, even faster than the rest of the field. Can Ronhaar top it even further? Let's see, P4 right now, and he's going to be P2, .526.
Xander Van Dyken on home soil, taking pole position. What a lap time coming out from him there. Jake Benham to the line. Misses out on pole position by just 0.003 of a second. Shanika Clay is also off the exit of the final corner. He's coming back into the pit lane. How about that? Xander Van Dyken on pole position on home soil. Ahead of Jake Benham, Thomas Ronhaar. He was quick, he was quicker than everyone in Q1, Q2, after the majority of Q3, but he missed out where it mattered. He'll start on the second row of the grid alongside Tom Manley. Tamas Gal in 5th position, 6th for Philip Presneder, 7th is Reese Linton. Jan Ortmir only in P8. The two, you gotta say, main protagonists heading into this qualifying session, the pair of them kind of bottled it. I gotta say, it's not what you expect from both Thomas Ronhaar and Jarno Opmir. It's by no means a bad qualifying session from the pair of them. Look at how fine these margins actually are. Xander Van Dyken on pole position by 0.003 of a second. Thomas Ronhaar 12,000 off the top spot. Tom Manley just 300th. Tamas Gal about half a tenth. Incredibly fine margins in qualifying here, but it's Xander Van Dyken with the best lap on the board heading into this race, and I gotta say, I think he was out of everyone's minds. In terms of who we predict for pole position, I didn't have him on my bingo card.
Well, he was one of the 3 drivers, I think, who didn't get a mention when we were asking people who you think's going to be on pole. Jake Benham got a mention, but Xander didn't. And lo and behold, as we were talking about how tight the margins are and how anything can happen, Xander comes and swings it in. He swings it in, home run, .514. What more can be said? Mic drop. Cheers. I'll take my pole position award in the mail.
Absolutely. I mean, what a lap coming out from Xander Van Dyken there. Heading into this race, it's going to be a very exciting tour from him. Yeah. I mean, what more can we say? This is a very mixed up grid. We've got some names that we really should expect in the very top of qualifying, further down than they should be. Jan Ortmir starting in 8th. Ishmael Fassi is all the way down in 11th. Dylan Warren is 9th in the championship. He's starting in 16th position, 17th position. Lots of drivers are a lot lower than they should be. I'm trying to leave the session that we're actually in. I'm not too sure what's happening there, but I'll tell you what, as that race is starting, that's not actually happening, everyone. You might have heard the little beeping on your screen there. We're getting a new lobby set up very shortly. It should be a fun ride. 36 laps, Sappy, around this circuit.
36 laps of pure racing excellence. So there's no other way to cut it. These are the best of the best. These are some of the top drivers in the world on F1. And we are going to see them battle it out around Zandvoort. And this is going to be fireworks. It's going to be amazing.
This could be maybe the turning point of the championship. If Jan Ortmeier has a bad race and Ismail Fassi makes up the gap, we could see a fantastic and hellacious ride heading into the last 3 rounds of the season. Maybe Thomas Ronhaar comes up with his 3rd win in a row. Lots of questions that remain to be answered heading into this race, and I'm very excited to see how we get along. I'm just waiting to load into the lobby, but I'm not actually sure what's going on at the minute. I've joined Luke Smith, our lobby host for this evening, but it's not showing up as me being in the session. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna Alt F4, I think, and come back into the game, and then fingers crossed we should all be good and getting ready for this race to start.
Yep, we're a little bit of technicals, but it can't stoke the excitement here.
No, not at all.
I wonder what the strategy is going to be when it comes to race time. What do you think?
Oh God, I mean the strategy normally all over the place. That is one thing I actually do love about this F1 23 game, is the unpredictability in the strategy. It really you don't know where. Oh dear, as my PC just froze. Hello? Am I all good?
Yep, you're alive again.
I thought my PC.
Welcome back.
I thought my PC froze for a second there. I'm trying to close the F1
pickup.
game. Oh my God. I'm trying to close the F1 game. I've closed it like twice in Task Manager. Jesus, that scared me there. I don't even know what I was saying. When did I cut out there?
You were talking about the unpredictability of the F1 23 game.
And I'm absolutely right about that. I mean, the strategy has never been clear cut. There's always been something that's better along a different circuit, and we saw a range of strategies last time out in Austria. I can't remember off the top of my head which one actually it worked out. Thank you for saying that's okay, Lani. Very, very, very much appreciated there. I got scared for a minute that that my game just stopped working and the stream was gonna die. We had mic issues before the stream even started. Hairy moment there, Sappy.
Yeah, well, we work on the sidelines. I say, for a smooth production, you don't often see us frantically racing around like 15-20 minutes of beforehand, wondering why this isn't working. Will this connect up? Is this set up properly? And that's sometimes the way in production. And sometimes it is what it is. You get things you don't expect, and things don't always figure out until right before things start.
Absolutely. At the minute, we're getting ready for 36 laps of Zandvoort. I think, why not join us on the other side of a quick word from our sponsors at Grid Finder and Next Level Racing. We'll see you in just a minute time.
It's the home of sim racing leagues. Our management tools allow you to recruit drivers and monitor their ratings and live splits. Find this and more at gridfinder.com. Sign up for free today.
Welcome back, everyone in the live chat. Thank you for being very patient with us. We should, fingers crossed, be getting into the race very soon. I know that we have all 20 drivers in the lobby now, and we are about to get ready to get underway. I can already see Joni Tormala impatiently readying up. Sappy, a very disappointing qualifying from him there, but his teammate Tom Manley, I gotta say, returning to WOR in the last 2 races, Tom Manley has been one that's, I think, flown under the radar.
Yeah, he's certainly brought his A game to Zandvoort, that's for sure. So we saw him sort of finding his feet, finding his pace. But yeah, Zandvoort quali today. I'm really hoping that converts into the race, because if quali's anything to go by, we should see an absolute weapon on track tonight.
Oh yeah, Xander Van Dyken. Very excited to see what he can do in this race. Starting on pole position, a former PlayStation champion back in the day. Tom Manley, also a champion in his own right. Jake Benham is a champion in the top 4. Is it top 5? Reese Linton slipped in there somewhere. He might actually be the last one in the top 5. We'll clarify in just a minute. Maybe I'll actually bring it up on my other screen here. Just see who actually was in that P5 slot. Oh, it's Tamas Gao. Not a console champion. Not important to me then. Unfortunate. But Sappi finally. We're getting ready to ready up into this one. Xander Van Dyken on pole, Jake Benham in P2, just 3,000 separating them in terms of qualifying trim. How close is that going to be in the race?
Well, that depends on how aggressive they've set their cars up, because I think it's going to be an important thing to remember that you can set your car up for qualifying trim really well, make it really fast, but you can sacrifice some longevity when it comes to the race. So you might see a little bit of temperature management come in a bit more aggressively for some cars than others. You might see a bit more scrubbing of the tyres. And while these drivers have prepared hundreds, if not thousands of hours to deal with these kind of things, it's things to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We're about to get ready for this race. I think now is a better time than ever for everyone to make their predictions on who they think is A, going to win, and B, who's going to take a podium position. Sappi, I'm going to throw that question over to you in a second. I want to hear everyone in the live chat who they think is going to be taking the win today. And we'll have to wait and see. Sappi, who are you going for?
As much as we've seen a really good performance from Ronha so far in the quali sessions, I know he's particularly strong in qualifying, but the home turf buff cannot be denied. Even with a slightly weaker qualifying in the Q3 session, I'm keeping my eye on Opmir for the race tonight.
Jan Watmir from P8 on the grid to take victory. I gotta say, normally, if it was anyone else, I'd say it's a bit of a hot take there, but it's Jan Watmir. He can do absolutely anything. Let's read out some of the responses in the live chat. Harvey Coleman is going with the pole sitter, Xander Van Dyken, to take victory. Dorita saying Opmir, as is Paul Richard. Awesome the First is going with Goatmir to take the victory. Zotar is going the other Dutchman in Thomas Ronha. Advaith is also agreeing with him there, saying Ronha in P1. Avatar is saying you, Dan. Appreciate that. Or maybe that said Danny. I can't really see, but if you're saying Dan, thank you very much. Not seeing many predictions for Sappi to take the win. Very unfortunately there. Lots of predictions on the board. I'll bring us over to the game now where we can see on circuit. It's a nice, clear, sunny day here in Zandvoort, and Sappi looking at the responses. It seems like Jan Ortmir has got the favourite vote.
Well, we know that he's particularly strong in race trim, and even if he has been a little further behind in qualifying, he has shown in the past that he's been able to pull back some good points. So it's one thing to have a really good quali trim, but as we were saying, that and translating it into the race, completely different skill set and completely different dynamic.
Here we go then, 5 red lights in Zandvoort, getting this race underway. Xander Van Dyken leading the way in towards turn number 1. Jake Benham looking to go up the inside and already take that position. Little bit of contact between Thomas Ronha and Tom Manley for P3 as they approach Tarzan Bok for the first time in this race. Thomas Ronha going around the outside of Xander Van Dyken, but it's Jake Benham to the lead of the Grand Prix. Xander Van Dyken from pole position already dropping into third as they approach the first sector.
Yep, and you can see some changing around already happening. So Jano Opmir up in P8, he just got around Shanaka Clay, and you can see that everyone is just trying to find some initial space. You've got 2 wide going through some of these corners. A bit further down, Luke Smith, Fitzban Pookie trying to find their slots, and that Alpine looking absolutely squeezed as they're going on the inside. But Tom Manley, Xander Van Dyken, they're going to be duking it out, going side by side. Apex through the right side, Apex through the left is going to be Xander. He's going to be pushing as much as he can, although, interestingly, interestingly, he's still keeping an eye on the resource management. Tom Malley in P3 right now isn't burning all the resources he has. He's playing a little bit of a safer strat despite he defending the position.
That's Louis Welch through the gravel and relegated all the way down into last position. Let's have a look at the tyres. You can see 3 drivers, Jan Ortmeier, Andrei Tarabican and Istvan Pukki, all of them on a set of the soft. We should expect to see them very quick early on. Here's Reese Linton making the move on Tamas Gal, further back behind. Jan Ortmeier going for the move on Philip Prejna. Oh, sorry, that's actually defending from Ismail Fassi. Ismail has had a great start to this race, all over the rear of his championship rival Luke Smith, also keeping him company there. Brilliant stuff that we're seeing. I think that's because Louis Welch was relegated down the order. There must have been some contact with another driver somewhere along the road. But at the front of the order, Jake Benham leading the way from Thomas Ronhard. Jake is on a set of the mediums, Thomas on the hards. Sappy, that should mean that Thomas Ronhard, as this race progresses, should be quicker than Jake Benham.
Yeah, I think it's actually a pretty clever strategy to go on the hard compound or go on the harder compound than your opponents when you're up at the front of the grid, because you can extend your stints, you can run them out of their pace, you can effectively feed off of their DRS, and when it comes to the pit window, you will be in the optimal position. But see, that's a yellow coming out. That's Dylan Warren. He's round.
Oh, Dylan Warren spinning. That's another driver being a casualty in that turn number 11 corner. Very difficult chicane to navigate there. Very unfortunate for both Louis Welch and Dylan Warren that they've come a cropper in through there. Reese Linton through on Xander Van Dyke and Jan Ortmeier trailing in the wheel tracks of Philip Prejnader. I saw Istvan Pukki looking for the move potentially on Andrei Tarabukin. Is it a smart move for these guys to be fighting this early on their set of the softs, or is it maybe better to hold back for the time being, try do some battling heading up the hill and onto the back of Luke Smith? These are the questions these drivers have to make in the heat of the moment, and sometimes those decisions can be the wrong ones. Jan Ortmeier, we're still watching the Mercedes driver struggle to get through on Philip Prejnader. This is not good for the Flying Dutchman. He needs to get through on Philip as soon as he can to make the most of these soft compound tyres. Sappy, they're not going to last forever here.
Yes, every single second that he's on those soft compounds and not making moves is effectively pace that he's burning. Now, I'm seeing a couple of reports saying that he is having control issues, so that may be factoring into it. Not having 100% confidence with his force feedback apparently going, but we'll have to wait and see, because he can't really do too much about it now. He's in the heat of the battle. He's going to have to make do and balance what he has got on his hands. But he is going to the inside. He is going to try and tuck in. Yeah, he nearly threw a bit of a dummy on all of us, I think, there. But Andrew Tarabukin around Luke Smith for P10.
I thought Jan Ortmeier was coming into the pit lane. He pulled off to the right-hand side. I thought he was coming to the pits. Apologies there. But Jan Ortmeier staying out on circuit, sitting in the wheel tracks of Philip Prejnader, might be just trying to recalculate the approach that he's going to take to this race if he is indeed suffering with some wheel issues. At the front of the order, though, Jake Benham is slowly but surely being reeled in by Thomas Ronhart, and now the DRS has been enabled. Thomas is going to do all he can to try and get through, or actually just try and keep with Jake Benham as long as he can, because those mediums still, by a decent margin, I'd say, are going to be the quicker tyres. So Thomas Ronhart got to keep his wits about him, but being well and truly within the DRS of Jake Benham, I think is a very comfortable position for the Dutchman to be in now.
Yeah, Ronhart doesn't actually want to overtake. He wants to run Benham out of his mediums. He wants to force him to use his ERS. And all the same time, he wants to keep that proximity and he wants to charge his own battery. So when time does come for either Benham to pit or him to make the overtake, Benham's got no battery, no recourse to make a counter.
And we've just seen Thomas Ronhart not go for the move when he easily could have went up the inside into that first corner. That just tells me his intentions for this race is to sit in behind, basically confirming our suspicions that Thomas Ronhart wants to sit in behind Jake Benham as long as he can and save those hard tyres, go as long as he can in this race, and then later on when it really does matter, strike on Jake Benham. Lots of different strategies which we absolutely love to see here in WOR. We've got basically a 50-50 split between the mediums and the hards. A few soft runners sprinkled in there. It is brilliant to see, and none of us know who's going to come out on top.
Yeah, it is still anyone's game. It's so early in the race that everyone is going to be trying to gauge their opponents right now. You can have a static strategy going in, but you have to be adaptive. You have to evolve as the track and as your opponents do, because you could say, right, I'm going to start on the mediums, then I'm going to go to the hards for the rest of the race. And I'm going to do it on, say, lap 19. But if your opponents stay out, if you're behind someone who's on the same tyre, you're going to have to weigh that up. So do I go in earlier, try and undercut them? Do I overcut them? Do I follow their cadence? It's all these kind of decisions that you're going to have to make at the same time, whether they've got someone in their ear or not. There's a lot to juggle as a driver.
Absolutely, there's so many things that go deeper than just turning the wheel at the right time, shifting when you can. There's so many things you have to think about when approaching this race, and that is the beauty of the top tier of league racing. When I used to league race Sappy, honestly, I would jump in, no practice at all, and then just turn up and hope for the best. These guys, they put in hours, not just driving along this circuit and making sure they've got every corner perfect, but working on the strategy, working on the setup, and that is the difference between a decent league racer and the very best. As we'll pull away from the very top of the action at the minute and have a look at the lower end of the top 10. Ishmael Fassi all over the rear of Jan Ortmir, who has refused to go for the move on Philip Presneder. Looked to the inside multiple times in towards turn number 1, not to make a move, but to cool his engine. Jan Ortmir is not pushing, I think, to deal with his force feedback issues. He doesn't want to risk a battle when he's not feeling the wheel, and I think Ishmael Fassi looking to reap the rewards potentially. Further back behind, though, as Thomas Ronhard goes for the move for the lead of this race. Luke Smith looking for the move on Andrei Tarabukin. Two very easy moves by the more durable tyres, in Thomas Ronhard's case the hards, in Luke Smith's case the mediums, and those are easy moves to take their positions respectively.
Yeah, well, you can see some of the cars that are stuck behind the likes of Opmir, for instance, Mafasi. He's having to peel out because his engine's getting too hot, and he's getting impatient. You're seeing even on the higher compound, he's not making moves, and he's not got the space for himself to get round. So I wonder if there's a bit of a confidence thing there with Opmir just not going for the move, because if he can't feel the wheel, if these force issues are still persistent, if they are accurate, then we could see a scenario where even with the pace on tap on these what should be new softs destroying the competition, that he's not got the confidence to go for it.
Absolutely, and this is really just playing on the mind of Jan Ortmir. It's got to be hurting his hopes of potentially running away with this championship. If Jan Ortmir continues to struggle with these issues, being on the arguably less favourable tyres at the minute of the softs when he's not been able to maximise their potential, he could potentially be looking at not finishing inside the points. Oh dear, a little bit of contact between Istvan Pukki and Shanika Clay. I cut in on myself there. Istvan Pukki, what was that move? I gotta say, Shanika was well and truly alongside Istvan there and completely just bumps into the side of him, pushes Shanika off the circuit. That's going to do for one for the stewards to look at, but Shanika once again in the wars here in WOR.
Yeah, in the trenches, in the wars, and this is kind of that nexus of drivers who want the position, who really want to fight, and it can very easily go over the line. It's not so much in terms of racecraft, it's not so much having the pace to get the move done, it's having the pace and the awareness and the restraint to get the move done at the right place at the right time safely. Because you can throw dive bombs, you can throw all these manner of moves, but stewards are hot on it. Of course, you can compromise your own race as well as others. It's a balancing act either way.
I mean, the stewards are definitely going to have a look at that one between Shanika and Istvan there. But Shanika, I know he's really in recent weeks had a tough time of it. Ended up finally scoring points last time out in Austria. But I believe he DNF'd in Belgium. I think the race before he might have had an issue. And unfortunately, it's looking like, once again, problems for Shanika Clay. But he is still in the train. He's right at the back of it. But he's still got hope of potentially taking some points in this race. At the minute, we're looking at Xander Van Dyken. Our pole sitter in this race has had nothing but hurt so far in this Grand Prix. He's been relegated all the way down into P5. However, this is the point, Sappy, where those hard tyres begin to pick up in pace, and slowly but surely, Xander Van Dyken, Tamas Gal, Philip Presneder, they're going to be quicker than the three ahead of them on the mediums.
Yep, this is that turning point, certainly for the soft runners, where they're really starting to see some drop-offs in pace, and they need to find a little bit of a call-out point of where they're going to be able to pull into the pits and minimize the damage on their track position. So the mediums will be feeling it, but it's going to be a little while yet. The hard runners, they just need to stick it out, stay in their lane, and see what comes out.
Absolutely. I think it's a bit of a waiting game for the time being. We still have 27 laps to go in this Grand Prix, so a long way until we actually see some proper battling right at the death of this Grand Prix. That means we're going to enter a bit of a lull period at the minute, but do not fear, we're going to see some battles very, very soon. The soft tyres at this point, though, definitely going to be feeling the wear. I think Ismail Fassi knows that. He's all over the rear of Jarno Opmeer, who in response to that is actually all over the rear of Philip Presjeda. I'm going to briefly bring up the telemetry just to see what these drivers are working with. Jarno Opmeer, despite being in the softs, has not pushed at all. 93% in the battery for him. Pretty much the same for Ismail Fassi. Philip Presjeda, 65 for him. Luke Smith on 100. So seems like these three following in behind Philip Presjeda, Sappi, they've got their ammunition ready, and they're going to go on the attack very, very soon.
Yep, it's about biding your time, finding the right opportunity to go for the attack. That's the more important thing here. I'm looking at some of these drivers. I'm looking at things like their battery, their tyre life, and we're seeing a few drivers who are really stacking up the battery and the charge in order to be able to go for the move. Because it's one thing to get the move, and it's another thing to confirm it. So I think what we're going to see in these next few laps is, if not going for the pits in the case of the soft runners, we're going to see drivers really push themselves and get those positions done. It's nearly go time.
When will we see the first pit stops coming out from the soft runners like Jarno Opmeer, Andrei Tarabukin and Istvan Pukki, or potentially going to be seeing one of the medium runners go first and bite the bullet, go onto the hards with the undercut strategy? A lot of question marks in the air, but in the next few laps or so, they should be answered. We know that Jarno Opmeer, he's very fond of the overcut, and that means he should possibly be staying out later in this race on that set of the soft compound tyres, maybe to stretch it for a mediums, but looking likely to go onto a set of the hards. We'll just have to wait and see as this race progresses. Jarno Opmeer still applying the pressure to Philip Presjeda. Ismail Fassi following close in behind. It seems like this has got to be the closest battle that we're seeing on the grid at the minute, aside from the fact that Jake Benham, he always gets close to the back of Thomas Ronhaar, but never pulls the trigger and never goes for the move.
Yeah, it's that constant will I, won't I, but saying that, Opmeer in the pit, first one to do so, and looks like the other two soft runners are going to be staying out for another lap or two more.
Yeah, hard tyres for Jarno Opmeer there. It's a bit ironic that I was just saying that he loves an overcut strategy, and then he is actually the first one out of everyone with a scheduled stop to come in to the pit lane. So Jarno Opmeer taking off that worn out set of the softs onto a set of the hards with the undercut, and we'll see if that works out for the Flying Dutchman, currently suffering those force feedback issues. Are they going to come back to bite him, as we're now a third of the way just about in this Dutch Grand Prix? But so far, Sappi, gotta say, it's not been as exciting as the likes of Belgium and Austria. However, I think in the next few laps, that's when it's going to pick up.
Well, the pit window is going to be the big differentiator, and we're already seeing a couple of drivers come out. So, for instance, Jarno, he's coming out in P18. He's got a lot of time to make up, and we're going to see a lot of other drivers weigh up whether it's time for them to go in their pits for their pit stops. So Tarabukin and Pukki, they're going to be the next two who are going to be making that call, if it's going to be this lap or they extend it and at least another lap further. I guess we're about to find out. But then the mediums will be the next ones to make that call. And Ismail Fassi, 11 laps only on the mediums, is going to be the next in, as Pukki and Tarabukin are going out further.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting call for Ismail Fassi to come into the pit lane for a set of the hards. Those mediums definitely had a little bit more life left in them, especially when you consider the fact that Andrei Tarabukin and Istvan Pukki, they are still remaining out on circuit, albeit losing a decent amount of time to Luke Smith at the minute. Jarno Opmeer then will emerge ahead of Ismail Fassi, but not by much. And I think Ismail just about is going to be ahead of Dylan Warren. I'm looking at my mini-map there for that information, but only 6/10 between Jarno and Ismail. That really does go to show those mediums definitely had a lot of life left in them, due to the fact that the undercut wasn't actually all that powerful for Jarno Opmeer. So the pair of them essentially on the exact same strategy now.
Yeah, they are on even keel, so this is going to be the real test for them. They're kind of operating in their own little bubble, at least right now. We're not going to see much interaction between them and the rest of the field for at least another, I'd say, 5 laps. So let's wonder if we can see a couple of other drivers get stuck into that fight. Next up in the pits, Tom Manley, Reese Linton.
Yeah, the pair of them into the pit lane as Jake Benham closes to the rear once again of Thomas Ronhar, not pulling the trigger and not going for the move. Andre Tabukin also into the box, so 2 race clutch drivers into the pit lane. The other driver being Tom Manley, representing Alpha Tauri in the esports scene. That's a good sign for Jarno Opmeer. Fastest lap of the race. Maybe those issues have been sorted for the Flying Dutchman, and with that undercut strategy, he is through on both Tom Manley and Reese Linton, who are a decent bit ahead of him in the race. The pair of them in the top 5. Ismail Fassé has to work a little bit harder than Jarno to make the move on Reese Linton there, but has come up he's come up in P16. That is a net, what I want to say, P3 for the time being, because if you consider the power that the undercut has had, that Jarno Opmeer going from 8th, 9th on circuit to now contesting with Tom Manley, who was running in 3rd, you have to think they're going to be ahead of Thomas Ronhar and Jake Benham once they come to the pit lane.
Yep, and now is where we're going to see, and this is always the I think the most difficult part to commentate when it comes to races, because you have the pit window and it varies for a lot of drivers, so you effectively see 2 races in motion, and it's trying to figure out who's going to be what at what point, who's going to be coming out on top, whether this person's going to come out ahead of this person. But we see Ikebana making an overtake on Isvan Pookie. I think Isvan has made a little bit of a misstep by taking the softs out these long.
Yeah, something's happened there with this Van Pookie. He's now lost 2 places in the span of just 1 corner. Ruben Pedreño is going to be all over the rear now of the Ferrari esports driver. Ikebana and Bench Abercrombie, both of them went up the inside and towards turn at number 1. Bench made the move and Ika just essentially followed him through. Now Ruben and Kai, they're going to be applying the pressure to Isvan Pookie at this point, but yeah, it's a very interesting call for the Ferrari esports driver to stay out this long on that set of the soft, which definitely are not going to be at their best side. I'd borderline be saying that in the next few laps they're going to be in puncture territory. As Ruben Pedreño made a little bit of a mistake heading through turn at number 9, that's going to secure Isvan Pookie for at least the next few corners. But maybe the Hungarian driver, you got to think it's best for him to come into the pit lane at the end of this lap.
Yep, unfortunately I can't get much of the reads on the tyre data because these guys have got their telemetry absolutely locked down. Usually this would be the point where I'd say, right, you're looking at about 50-60% wear on this tyre, 20-30% on this tyre. We see a trade of positions between the Alpine cars. That's Luke Smith making a move on Presnader as Isvan Pookie finally coming into the pits. 15 laps on those softs. He's going to be coming out onto mediums as Ruben Pedreño is going to be defending off of Kai Pearson.
And there goes Tom Manley for the net lead of this Grand Prix through on Jarno Opmeer. That's 2 lap fresher, hard tyres strapped onto the Alpha Tauri. Shouldn't have been a very difficult move for Tom Manley whatsoever. And this is when Jarno Opmeer has got to keep his wits about him. He really does have to fight with everything to stay in this train. And it's going to be very difficult for Jarno to actually fight with these guys as their tyres get younger and younger. His get on more and more in age. It's going to be very difficult to defend those positions as Ikebana, we saw him go for the move on Bench Abercrombie in towards turn at number 1. Now he hasn't got any DRS, so Bench is going to potentially go on the attack. Ruben Pedreño also waiting in the wings. We could see some very interesting battles in the next few laps. One I want to pay attention to is Jarno Opmeer and Ismail Fassé though. Ismail is all over the rear of Jarno Opmeer at this point in time, heading through the final few corners of this circuit as Jake Benham and Luke Smith are taking off their set of the medium compounder tyres. I wonder, when is Ismail Fassé going to pull the trigger and go for the move on Jarno?
I think it's only a matter of time, but I think he's waiting to see where these other cars come out first. So he's not going to necessarily be able to get the run on Opmeer for the next couple of laps. They do have proximity, but it's just not enough to confirm a move out of. We see a few more drivers who are teeing up potential moves. So wherever Ismail Fassé makes a mistake, Reese Linton is going to be right there to capitalize. And in fact, that Haas is in a very good position because if either of them makes a mistake, if either of them make moves, put each other offline, Linton can close the gap for himself and inherit a couple positions almost for free.
Yeah, honestly, he's got nothing to lose at the minute. I mean, Jake Benham, he's got 3 lap fresher hard tyres, so he should close in the next few runs. But yeah, Reese Linton, for the time being, everything to gain, nothing to lose in comparison to his rivals. Jarno Opmeer beginning to lose time to Tom Manley, who's stretching that gap to now 0.6 of a second. The DRS is going to be saving Jarno Opmeer for the next few laps, but how much is that going to be when the likes of Ismail Fassé and Reese Linton have fresher hard tyres strapped onto their their cars. I wonder, is Jarno Opmeer maybe going to look to play the team game in this one and hold them up for Jake Benham, who'll be on the attack very soon, as Reese Linton off the exit of turn number 14 is all over the back of Ishmael Fassi, who will defend to the inside and go inherently onto the attack of Jarno Opmeer. The long way round of Tarzan blocked for Reese Linton, who's going to come out on top. Reese Linton with the ever so slightly fresher hard tyres, and Ishmael Fassi does a very, very good job of defending that position, but great battling on lap number 18.
He's right to the back of him right now, so Fassi has got a very difficult situation on his hands. Does he go full attack against Opmeer and potentially put himself out of position, or does he play a middle ground while defending from Reese Linton? Because Linton has made himself very clear that he is a present threat. He is not to be taken lightly, and he wants these positions just as bad as this Williams does right now. Fassi getting very close to the back of Opmeer, almost clipping with the rear on his front wing, but they're still continuing to come to blows.
Yeah, absolutely. Ishmael Fassi, dubbed by George Morgan as the artist. He's just imagining his greatest new work. He's, of course, known for his incredible overtakes on some of the fiercest rivals that he has in the F1 sim racing scene. Ikebana into the pit lane off of his hard compound of tyres. We saw Ben Shabakoni last time out also come into the pit lane. And so it seems like some drivers beginning to have enough of their hard compound of tyres and favouring a set of the mediums. It's Van Pookie. Interestingly enough, he went soft to medium, and that, for the time being, has worked out. He's gaining places, but once again, Tapu, we see the difference between Jarno Opmeer and Tom Manley's tyres, and that's only 2 laps of difference. It's Van Pookie. You got to think that's a bit of a misstep for him to go onto those mediums to end off this Grand Prix.
Yeah, he's put himself in a pretty awkward position because now he's not got any cars around him to kind of bounce off of either. You can see a bit further in the back, Bench Sabakonyi and Ruben Pedreño, they're going to be side by side. They're going to be taking the fight to each other, getting very close alongside one another. And Sabakonyi should have the tyre advantage. He's on basically fresh mediums, as good as he can get on the grip. But Pedreño is still holding that position off.
Yeah, my word, Ben Shabakoni actually dipping a tyre into the grass there, almost coming to blows. That could have been a very ugly scene between himself and Ruben Pedreño. Luckily, it did not end out that way, as Thomas Ronhaar is into the pit lane. There should be a set of the medium tyres to finish off this race for the Sauber driver. Same thing for Tamas Gout, and where will they emerge in comparison to Tom Manley, Jarno Opmeer, and Ishmael Fassi, who now will be inheriting the lead of this Grand Prix? Thomas Ronhaar will be a long way down in the order, but of course on those mediums should have a lot of pace in the back of that Sauber car. And Sappi, this is where the race really does begin.
Now it's game time. Now this is where everyone is really going to be baring the teeth. The placements are becoming a lot more true to what we're expecting out of the other end of the pit window. Few drivers left yet to pit, so the top 3 right now, Tamas Gout, Presneda and Shanaka Clay, they have yet to pit here in this race, along with Dylan Warren down at the bottom. But this is more or less what we're looking at position-wise, and so far, Tom Manley, very good spot to be.
Yeah, he's at the head of this train. He's doing a very good job of holding off Jarno Opmeer, Ishmael Fassi, Reese Linton, all of those guys who are soon going to be under pressure from Jake Benham and Luke Smith, who have those fresher hard tyres strapped on to their Mercedes and Alpine respectively. And they've got an even more of a look in later on, as there's Reese Linton going for the move on Ishmael Fassi. Ishmael, I think, very happy. Wow! Ishmael Fassi back up the inside. I thought he was going to be very happy to let that one slide, but that is not the case whatsoever. Diving back up the inside of Reese Linton. That was a gold medal performance from him there. Reese Linton not happy with that move whatsoever, and we'll go back on the attack side by side along the sand dunes of Zandvoort, and Reese Linton will make up that position. Nice bit of battling between the pair of them. Could have ended very badly, but Reese Linton coming out on top.
Yeah, they were looking very close with one another, and I knew Reese was waiting, seeing what opportunities he could get, and I think it's time he finally pulled the trigger. You can see the pressure slowly building up on these drivers as they have such close proximity to one another. In all of that, though, with Linton and Fassi fighting, Opmeer is just about to break the 1 second barrier, and that could be crucial for race strategy.
It's actually Jarno Opmeer about to lose the DRS to Tom Manley. I think at the DRS detection point off the exit of turn number 12, Jarno has got the DRS indeed. You can see the letterbox opening at the rear of that Mercedes. However, it could be a scary scene for him, as now Jake Benham, the all-star, on the attack of Ismail Fassi with 4-lap pressure, hard tyres on that Mercedes. It's an easy move up the inside for number 25. Ismail Fassi, though, going back on the attack. Really aggressive driving from the young Spaniard here today. However, Jake Benham is going to come up with that move in the bag for him there, and now he is on the precipice of taking a podium in this Grand Prix. Jake Benham doing a fantastic job, and until Thomas Ronhaar, Xander Van Dijk and the likes of them catch up to this train, you got to put Jake Benham as the favourite to potentially win this race.
Yeah, Jake Benham has really caused a bit of a stir, both for us and for the chat, because you can see him right now, P4, looking quite confident, as he has made quite a substantial movement in this grid, and he could tip the balance as we come into the second half of the race.
And Luke Smith making the move on Ismail Fassi. Ismail beginning to struggle on these tyres to keep up with the younger hards on Jake Benham and Luke Smith cars, as Thomas Ronhaar closes ever so slightly closer to the back of this train. He is now within DRS range of Andrei Tarbukin. Jake Benham is pretty much hugging the rear of Reese Linton, heading down the start-finish straight, charging like a bull up the inside and towards turn number 1. Jake Benham, with a late braking maneuver, will go up into P3, and this is a double Mercedes podium as it stands for the time being. Great showing from both Jarno Opmeer and Jake Benham. Don't forget, Jarno Opmeer is up 9 spots in this Grand Prix. Granted, he did it with a massive undercut strategy, as now the two race car drivers of Reese Linton and Luke Smith do battle side by side in the first sector. Who's going to come up on top here today? And it's Luke Smith through on Reese Linton.
Very impressive from there, and impressive from Jake Benham. The silver arrow looking a lot more like a silver bullet, as he has made a way very quickly to the podium, and he's coming up to the back of his teammate, 5 laps younger on the hards. I wonder if there's going to be some coordination there, or if there's going to be holding position to try and gain on Tom Manley.
Absolutely, as we're on lap number 23 of 36. We are coming towards the end of this Grand Prix. Here's Thomas Ronhaar on the back of Ismail Fassi. 3-lap-old mediums against 10-lap-old hards. Oh dear, this is not going to be a fun one for Ismail Fassi. Really, it's just like watching your old dog try and waddle his way along the road, as here comes Thomas Ronhaar up the inside. His spring in his step as ever, and he weaves along to allow for Ismail Fassi just to receive his thanks there. Meanwhile, at the front of the order, Jake Benham through on Jarno Opmeer, and so Thomas Ronhaar, he is closing to the back of these leaders here on the precipice of a top 5.
Yep, and with the top 5 firmly set in stone, Reese Linton and Thomas Ronhaar are going to be continuing a little bit of a tradition, which is what we've seen for a few laps now, and that has been taking the fight to each other, coming out of turn 3 and seeing who can the drag race down to turn 6, down to Shiviak, or I believe I've completely butchered that pronunciation, but down to turn 6 and turn 7 at least. We've seen a little bit of a trend, which is drivers get a good run on each other, and you see Luke Smith, in fact, is going to be getting a move on Opmeer here, and just about avoiding disaster, looking very close to that Mercedes. Coming through turn 11, that is a move up for the Alpine.
And now here comes Thomas Ronhaar. He's 50 points back on Jarno Opmeer in the championship, but every move means that he inches closer to a potential second championship on PC. Thomas Ronhaar up the inside of Jarno Opmeer. Here we go. Jarno defending the outside line, but there's just no match for those fresher medium tyres on his fellow countryman. Thomas Ronhaar now into the top 4 of his home Grand Prix, and he'll be all over the back of Luke Smith off the exit of this corner. I think he's looking for the move in towards now the undulating first sector. Here comes Thomas Ronhaar. Onto the podium he goes, and he's throwing Luke Smith.
Yep, and with that now, you can see Ronhaar in P3, Benham P2, Manley P1. It's all on the table for these top 3.
Absolutely, is now Thomas Ronhaar looking to the outside line of Jake Benham in towards turn number 10. Will pull the over and under, and off the exit of turn number 10. Open up that DRS. What about the battery? 65 in the back of that Sauber. He's got time. He'll bide every moment that he can and know that he is going to have the advantage for the time being on Jake Benham in towards turn number 13 and 14 for the 25th time in this Grand Prix. You gotta think this is the opportunity for Thomas Ronhaar. Is he gonna be able to make his way into P2, potentially P1 at the end of this straight? It doesn't look like it. Jake Benham, on the other hand, will go up the inside of Tom Manley. In towards the corner they go. Tom Manley doing a very good job of defending that position. Sappy, you don't know where to look. This is a brilliant battle between these three.
Yep, and it's going to be looking like it's about to come to blows. We saw a bit of tyre bumping between Manley and Benham. Ronhaar almost goes into the back of Benham as they both slow down on the apex of the corner. But now it's a flat drag race, seeing who can get the run. Benham right on the back of Manley, looking for any opportunity that he can find to get around these next couple of corners. Set himself up for turn 9. Let's see what he can do here. But Ronhaar is going to be lying in wait, trying to charge up.
Oh, Thomas Ronhaar looking for the move up the inside line. The curtain will fall for another masterpiece of an overtake for Thomas Ronhaar. What a move down the inside of turn number 10. Will solidify that move on Jake Benham in towards the braking zone of turn number 11. And there's just one car in between himself and that P1. He's on the precipice of winning 3 races in a row here in WOR. I don't know if it's ever been seen before, to be completely honest with you. Here he goes off the exit of the final corner. He looks up the inside of Tom Manley like a bullet towards P1. Thomas Ronhaar, fantastic move for him there. Tom Manley relegated into P2 there. There's really no chance he could have defended that position, and Thomas Ronhaar into the lead.
Yep, and as you see a little bit further down, Tamas Gow is chasing down Reese Linton. Your 5 top positions as it stands: Ronhaar, Manley, Benham, Smith and Uppbeat, all bringing absolutely everything onto this track, giving it their all, their absolute A game. We've seen a few drops, we've seen a few rises from a lot of drivers. Ronhaar, prime position now, 7-lap-old mediums, looking good on the resource. Now he needs to be careful to manage himself. Tamas Gow is going to be going up as Reese Linton makes a crucial mistake. He overcooks it into the gravel. I wonder if that was a case of him overcooking it, or if there's been a little bit of a space issue there I didn't quite catch.
It's the latter. A little bit of contact between Tamas Gow and Reese Linton. One race clutch driver against the former race clutch driver. I wonder if there's any bad blood between the pair of them. Of course, they weren't a part of the team at the same time, but Tamas Gow, maybe a bit of an iffy move, maybe a bit impatient on the back of Reese Linton, but really, it's a big shame for Reese. He'll lose out on that one as Andre Buchanan and Philip Pressure run side by side. They're flicking in the timing tower. I think Philip is just about going to come out on top in this battle for the final point paying position. Real shame for Reese Linton there. He's going to have to now deal with Philip Pressure, very experienced F1 esports driver in his own right, and try and defend on 14-lap-old hards.
Yep, experience is going to take you a long way, because he knows how to fight and go to wheel. He knows how to gauge drivers and what they're going to do in these kind of situations, and he can apply that fully to his advantage. You see the fastest lap coming from Dylan Warren, 109.930. He's in a bubble of his own. He's on the soft, so he can do that damage control, potentially steal a point away from the top. But yeah, all eyes right now, as the top end of the field has seemingly stabilized, eyes are on Presnator.
Philip Pressure with the move, easy to like on Reese Linton, getting himself up into P9. It will be a good day at the office for Philip Pressure, a Q3 appearance, and now looking to score as many points as he can. We're looking at Tamas Gow though for the move on Jarno Uppbeat, looking into the top 5. These two essentially known for the polar opposites. Tamas really good in qualifying, not so good in the race, and it's opposite for Jarno Uppbeat, but Tamas knows that he's got to bide his time here. Maybe what happened with Reese Linton has shook his confidence ever so slightly. Is going to remain in P6 for the time being, knowing that the Jarno's tyres are going to be falling off a cliff very soon. 17 laps on that set of the hards in comparison to 8 laps on the mediums. That's night and day difference.
Well, we know these drivers can also do a pretty good job of managing their tyres, managing the rubber, so maybe they're deliberately not pushing too hard, and that's why we're seeing not many positional changes, because remember, coming out the racing line, coming out from a smooth movement, is going to see you put additional pressure on the tyres. You'll burn off additional rubber, you'll generate excess temperature, which is something you need to manage.
Absolutely. We're on lap number 29 of 36. This time by, it's going to be 7 laps to go. This race has absolutely flown by. Thomas Ronhard leading the way, but I gotta say, he's not really pulled the gap to Tom Manley. And by the end of this race, I'd say those tyres are going to be in pretty equal condition. Is the race won for Thomas Ronhard, or maybe is he going to have to look in his mirrors ever so slightly as we reach the twilight stage of this Grand Prix? These are questions that will be answered in 7 laps time, as Ismail Fassi is all over the back of Xander Van Dyken on 17-lap-old hard tyres. He does not give a care in the world if you know, to go for that move on Xander Van Dyken. It doesn't quite work out there, but it's good to see that he's still got the spirit, and it's a real shame that Ismail Fassi, this race couldn't have been more for him, but yeah, that qualifying performance really hampering him at the moment.
Well, I'd actually contend that Ronhard doesn't want to pull a massive gap because he'd have to expend a lot of resources to do so. And by that point, the minute he falls back into within that second, maybe let's say the mediums drop off a bit earlier than Manley has managed his hards, then once he's back in that window, he's going to have nothing to be able to defend that top spot. So I think he's taking slightly riskier in the short term, but better in the long term approach to conserve his tyres, to play a little bit safer with the ERS. And even if Manley gets close using DRS, he's still got an opportunity to fight back because he hasn't burnt everything trying to break the second.
Yeah, and Thomas Ronhard, he's also going to be hoping that Jan Ortmeier loses as many positions as humanly possible at this point in time to try and get close as he can in the title fight, as Ismail Fassi is back on the attack of Xander Van Dyken in towards turn number 1. I wonder, are these medium tyres beginning to fall off? With 11 laps of wear on those mediums, they're 7 laps fresher than Ishmael's old hards. However, of course, with the longevity difference, Ismail Fassi has actually been able to go on the attack and make a move on the Aston Martin driver, your pole sitter in this race. It's been a torrid day in terms of racing for Xander Van Dyken, first all the way down into 8th at this point. But Ismail Fassi, maybe don't count him out at this point. Maybe don't count out Jan Ortmeier as well. All of these hard runners, Sappy, I think they're getting more and more confidence as this race goes on with 5 laps to go.
Yeah, as you get closer to the end, you can really see the hard runners really lean a bit more into the grip they have. While they do have less peak grip, it's a lot more consistent and it runs for a lot longer time. So as we're seeing the latter end of their stints, we're seeing them really push a bit more because they can. They have the safety net, they have the budget on those tyres to be able to do so. Key thing though with Xander Van Dyken and why he lost the move to Fassi, he was below 10% battery, and when you're below 10% battery, you lose a bit of engine power to try and recover that. Presnader, just behind, is going to be the next one to take a stab at that Aston Martin, but he's not done there. He's looking very close to the back of Fassi. He could be making it a double coming out of turn 3. Let's see what he does.
Oh, as I think maybe he's going to calm down ever so slightly. Only 10-lap-old medium tyres on that Alpine, although he's still going to have some pretty decent grip in comparison to Ismail Fassi. This is a brilliant battle between all top 10 or top 9 drivers, all within one big DRS train. Reese Linton, unfortunately, really has fallen off in this race. I think that was due to the contact with Tamas Gal forcing him off the circuit. That is why there's actually no 150-meter board for turn number 10 there. Of course, it doesn't really make much of a difference. If you saw briefly momentarily ago, I also went through all of the battery situations. Thomas Ronhard in the top 3 train has actually got the least amount of battery out of all of them, so maybe that is going to be a determining factor as this race comes to a close. 4 laps to go this time by. Thomas Ronhard still leading on his 12-lap-old medium tyres. Tom Manley, now it's going to be 19 laps on those set of the hards. The difference is 6 laps, and I'm just wondering, I think Tom Manley is going to have an opportunity to potentially win this race.
Yeah, if he plays his cards right here, he could cause a big upset by taking the win here. Now, he just needs to bide his time, wait until a couple more laps, and then he can really put the pedal to the metal with a full battery. Force Ronhard in an uncomfortable position where he's having to burn resource just to keep you behind, and then you can go for the final swing. But let's see what he does in terms of strategy, because Jake Benham is also on 3-lap younger hards and in an even better battery situation, so he could get really stuck into this.
Don't count out Luke Smith as well. Luke Smith out
the train continues.
The train absolutely does continue. I mean, don't count any of these guys out coming towards the end of this race. I mean, it could go any which way. Let us know, everyone, in the live chat now. You have to lock in your predictions at this very moment. Who you're going for to win this Grand Prix. There's so many variables that could influence the end of this Grand Prix. 3 to go this time by. Tom Manley still on the rear of Thomas Ronhaar, not budging at all on the battery, using it ever so slightly to close to the rear of Thomas in his Sauber car. Here comes the AlphaTauri, looking potentially to the inside, but actually has to defend from Jake Benham. 3 wide off the exit of turn number 1. Who's going to come off worse in this battle? Somehow they all keep on the road. Wow, fantastic stuff there. Tom Manley defending from Jake Benham, who had to defend from Luke Smith. There was a 3 wide, little bit of contact between all of them, but somehow they've all come off okay.
There was a big slip from Tom Manley out of that first corner. He just lost the rear a tiny bit, had to course correct and lost some speed, but he did defend tooth and nail to keep that P2 position. Now, I just wonder if that has affected his confidence at all, and he cannot afford to shake even for a second because he's only got 2 laps to go.
Well, in all of that as well, he had to use some of the battery to defend that position. Louis Welch still retiring in the pit lane. The lone retirement in this Grand Prix. Tom Manley has effectively lost his ERS advantage to Thomas Ronhaar. They are about level on 65% as it stands. Tom should be able to save a little bit more following in the wheel tracks of Thomas Ronhaar. But now with 2 to go this time by, Thomas has built up an ever so slightly bigger buffer than I think Tom Manley would have liked. So as this race continues along, yellow flags could impact some racing in towards this first sector here, but Thomas Ronhaar, for at least this point in time, will defend that position, and then it's going to go on to the final lap.
Yeah, the local yellow coming out, that is for Louis Welch's car as it passes through the pit lane before retiring. Always found that a little bit awkward, but the drivers press on regardless. Yeah, Jake Benham is currently sitting as well as a driver to be keeping an eye on. As well as Luke Smith, because they're both sitting on 18-lap-old hards. They're both sitting on a relatively good battery store, and they've got Tom Manley ahead, who did have that little shake-up and is purely focused on getting onto the back of Ronhaar. Dylan Warren is going to be the next retirement, and I think we've seen the trend of both of them just saying, right, I've done my time, I have got myself in my own little bubble, I'm on the softs, I'm not really in the race anymore, I might as well retire, save the car.
Yeah, disappointing for both Louis Welch and Dylan Warren to be eliminated from this race. But now all eyes are on the battle between Thomas Ronhaar, Tom Manley, Jake Benham, Luke Smith, you name it, they're probably in the battle. Here they go for the final time to take towards the start finish straight. Thomas Ronhaar already weaving, trying to break the toe of Tom Manley, who's going to be closing that gap and looks a long way round. Thomas Ronhaar defending like a lion for this position. Tom Manley has to back out, and Thomas Ronhaar has retained that P1 for the time being. Tom Manley now has to look in his mirrors at Jake Benham, but is that the opportunity gone? Has Thomas Ronhaar won this race?
I was going to say, if there was any time to make the move, now would have been a good one. He did go for it, but he couldn't make it fully. And Jake Benham is right on the back of Tom Manley right now. He's got half a battery compared to Tom Manley's 15%. He put everything into that first move, and because it didn't pan out, he hasn't got anything to save himself from Benham, who could very well take P2 into this next zone.
Has Thomas Ronhaar secured that win? Tom Manley now looking to defend from Jake Benham for the final few spots on the podium. Thomas Ronhaar extending that advantage. Jake Benham looking to the inside line, but it's no good. 3 Xbox champions doing battle on PC Tier 1. I think the advantage has gone for Tom Manley as Thomas Ronhaar off the exit of the final 2 corners. He has now won 3 races in a row. Unprecedented dominance from the Dutchman here this evening. The Sauber will take victory on home soil today. Tom Manley in second position. Third is Jake Benham by just 600ths of a second there. Luke Smith will round out the top 4, and Jarno Otmir defending very well in P5. But Thomas Ronhaar, 3 wins in 3 races. He is in some fine form at the minute, and he shows no signs of slowing down.
3 wins in a row. Can you really argue with that? You just don't have a real retort to it. That is an amazing performance. Immense driving from everyone in this race. We saw tooth and nail come out for everybody. We saw battles up and down the grid. We had a little bit of nail biting for some. We saw a little bit of sketchiness, like we saw the incident with Tamas Cow and Reese Linton. But at the end of the day, what a drive from so many of these racers.
great stuff throughout the entirety of this grid today. Gotta say, one of the cleaner races that we've seen so far this season, but for the third time in a row, it is the Sauber of Thomas Ronhaar winning here in WOR. Tom Manley, very welcome return to the podium for him, as well as Jake Benham getting himself into P3, yeah, sorry, my mind just went blank completely for a second there. Having a look then at the points total, Thomas Ronhaar should have cut that gap to Jarno Opmeer to, I think, just 35 points now. If I'm not mistaken, he's made up 15 in this race, and the gap was 50 coming into Zandvoort today. Thomas Ronhaar with a great showing here this evening. You can see all of the results on your screen. We got to about 5th position last time. So Tamas Gao in at 6th. 7th is Ismail Fassi, losing more points to Jarno Opmeer. Philip Presneder in 8th. 9th is Xander Van Dyken. And rounding out the top 10 is Bent Jabokoni. Reese Linton in 11th. 12th is Shanika Clay. Yoni Tormler, a nice race from him. 13th from 20th on the grid. Andre Tarabeacon 14th. 15th is Ruben Pedreño. 16th Ikabena. Kai Pearson 17th. 18th Istvan Pukki. 19th Dylan Moran. And Louis Welch rounding out the grid this evening. But it is once again Thomas Ronhaar on top today.
I honestly think that if... this may be a little bit hot for some. If Tom Manley hadn't messed up the lap prior, if he hadn't lost the rear the lap prior on turn 1, I think he could have won.
Maybe.
He would have been on the ball to win because he wouldn't have had to burn his extra battery. He would still be running confidently. But at the same time, Jake Benham didn't get the punish for that. He didn't get the opportunity to take that P2 from him as a result. So no matter which way we can slice it and give it hypotheticals, there was a lot of different ways this could have gone. But where it went tonight is, as it stands, 3 race wins in a row for Ronhaar.
Yeah, Thomas Ronhaar looking undeniable at the winner, and it's also at the winner at the minute. I just can't get wins out of my head when talking about Thomas Ronhaar, but at the moment he is looking like he is untouchable here in WOR, looking to reclaim his throne that he lost in season 15, of course, the season 14 PC Tier 1 champion. Looking to reclaim his mark and join Jarno Opmeer as a 2-time WOR champion. Let's over then to the post-race interview screen and have a little look in the waiting room to see if we've got anyone to talk to. And indeed, we do. We have Thomas Ronhaar joining us in the interview room. Thomas, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling awesome after that race. It's been been a good one. Only downpour is really qualifying. I brought up my pole position in Sector 2, unfortunately, but yeah, fun race, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely, and qualifying, of course, you only ended up in, I think, P3 by the end of it, but you were 12 thousandths to the back of Xander Van Dyken. Was there a mistake on that lap that maybe could have seen you on pole?
I mean, there's a lot of ifs on that lap, you know. Our ball definitely, pole position was definitely in there. But yeah, I think Sector 2 wasn't ideal, and that's what cost him, unfortunately. But P3 still to play for, even though it's a very hard track to overtake. I knew if I got the right strategy, I definitely had a shot for the win. And straight away, I knew the pace was good on the hard tyres compared to the medium runners with Jake. And I sort of found throughout the race that the medium tyres were a bit slower than the hards, actually. I don't know how that happened, but wasn't able to, you know, gap Tom Manley as much in the second stint that I did to Jake in the first stint on the hards. I don't think that's due to pace difference. I think it's due to the tyres that are a bit worse. I don't know how, but yeah, that's what happened, and very happy to take the win.
Yeah, of course, taking your 3rd win in a row. Out of the 3 that you've had so far this season, winning in your home Grand Prix, surely that's got to feel a little bit more special than the others.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's my first win at Zandvoort as well, so that's a very good feeling to have. And like I said, nothing is impossible in the championship, and I don't know what the gap is now to P1. I think that's still Jarno, like 30 points or something.
35, I think, at this point, yeah.
35, yeah. I think there's still 3 races to go. So, like I said, nothing is impossible. Hopefully, I'm at least within a chance mathematically in the last round. That would be nice, and to have a little bit of a championship fight. Yeah, gonna be a fun last 3 races, definitely.
Yeah, of course, 3 races to go. We go to our Middle Eastern leg of the calendar. It's Qatar up next. How are you feeling around that circuit?
I mean, in the past, I think PSL, we had a 1-2 with me and Brendan back in PSL. I think that's the last time I raced there. So, it's been a good track in terms of success, but that was also due to a mega strategy. And I know with the grid, WR and PSL, but especially, yeah, today, it is very hard, to be consistently at the front and to fight for a win every race. So, yeah, we just gotta have to wait, like I say, every time, and hopefully it's gonna be an enjoyable one.
Yeah, well, that's all from me. Really well done today. It was a fantastic showing from you throughout. That's all from me, though. Sappy, anything you want to say to our race winner here?
Yeah, well, you covered a lot of bases that I was going to say. I obviously saw your standings, and I've sort of come in with round 9 with a little less context than down here. But 3 wins on the trot. How are you feeling with these 3 rounds to go? How are you feeling in terms of that last-minute surge towards the championship title? You feeling it?
Yeah, I guess. Hopefully, like I say, I'm mathematically in the last round. That would be nice. And I don't know if I've ever won 3 races in a row in the league. I think that's the first time. So that is definitely very good for me as well for the confidence heading towards the last few races. And we're just gonna have to wait and see. Every race is different. It can be a lot more chaotic. It can be a bit more unlucky as well. But yeah, let's see what happens.
You certainly got the momentum there, and you've done a great job thus far, mate. So congratulations on tonight and keeping that streak going.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Thomas Ronhard joining us in the interview room for what was it? A fantastic race on his behalf. I mean, it was a great race altogether. Not seeing anyone else in the mission room, so sorry, in the interview waiting room. So I'll bring us back over to the little intermission screen that we have here this evening. Sappy, what else can we say about that race? I gotta say, was not expecting such strong performances from Ismail Fassi and Jan Watmir, going for their very interesting pit strategy, to say the very least. They ended up scoring some pretty decent points.
Yeah, it certainly did very well. You had to excuse me there. I was doing a little pit stop of my own with my headset battery. But no, we saw a lot of different approaches to today's race. We saw some hard, some medium, some soft. We saw some rotation all the way through. And some drivers who we expect to take like an overcut strategy. What we talked about Opmir typically going for the overcut and favouring that. We went for the undercut pretty much straight away ahead of the entire rest of the field. So strategy-wise, a lot of upsets.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was a really interesting race from start to finish. In terms of on-track battling, maybe wasn't the most exciting that we have seen in WOR history, but you know what? On the whole, it was an incredibly fun race to commentate over. I believe that was all we really have to talk about here this evening. But before I send you all on your merry way, make sure you check out the Discord, because, of course, Season 17 sign-ups are open now. And if you want to take the fight to the likes of Otis Lawrence, Thomas Ronhorn, Jake Benham, maybe sometime in the future, make sure you head over to our Discord. And here is how you can do it. Step 1, of course, as previously mentioned, join our Discord server and then complete your PC or console sign up by February 21st before that is all done and dusted. And of course, for new drivers, it is 3 time trials that you have to submit: Belgium, Mexico and Qatar. And for returning drivers, it is just the one of Belgium. And to confirm your sign up for season 17 of WOR, you have to submit that screenshot by February 21st. And if you want to have a little look at the calendar for both PC and console, it's the exact same, just the dates ever so slightly different. Bahrain round number 1, round 2 is Saudi, round 3 is Imola, round 4 Azerbaijan, Canada round 5, over the hump and in towards the second half of the season, it's Italy round number 6, 7 is China, 8 Austria, 9 is Miami, and then Brazil is your final round of the season. That should be our final season of WOR on this game. But thank you everyone for tuning in here this evening. If you haven't already, please make sure you check out WOR on Twitter. I'm actually just really quickly check the interview room, just see that we're not missing anyone there. It doesn't seem like it, so no, we are going to conclude on a very positive note. I think Thomas Ronhard seemed very happy in the interview room there. If you haven't already, then make sure you subscribe to the WOR YouTube channel and leave a like to the stream. The growth has been greatly appreciated. We've now surpassed 19,300 subscribers. And if you want to follow us on social media, it is at WOR League on Twitter. If you want to sign up to Season 17, and if you want to keep up to date with all your World Online Racing news, you can check out the Discord. The link is in the description. If you want to follow myself on Twitter, it is at DanfieldF1_. And if you want to follow Sappy, it is at Sappytron. Very easy. You can see it just under our wonderful faces here. But that is all from us this evening. Thank you very much once again for tuning in to the Dutch Grand Prix. We will see you next time out in Qatar.
It is the home of sim racing leagues. Our management tools allow you to recruit drivers and monitor their ratings and live splits. Find this and more at gridfinder.com. Sign up for free today.